The human archive. They ranked humanity last. Then the rescue exercise went real. Chapter 1. Bottom of the rankings. Every cadet at the Galactic Officer Academy wanted the same thing. Not graduation, not prestige, not even command. They wanted their species engraved upon the wall of distinction. The wall stretched nearly 100 meters through the Academy's oldest hall, its black stone polished until it mirrored the vaulted ceiling and the pale lights suspended high above. Thousands of names had been carved into its surface. Fleet admirals, rescue commanders, explorers, diplomats, and officers whose decisions had altered the course of history. Every graduating class passed beneath it on the day they received their commissions. Every first-year cadet passed beneath it on their first day, when the blankness where their names might someday appear served as a reminder. They had done nothing worth remembering. Cadet Verk preferred visiting before dawn. The corridors were quiet then. No instructors, no shouted orders, no crowds pressing beneath the monuments to study names they hoped to stand beside one day. Only the distant hum of the Academy's environmental systems and the faint clicking of maintenance drones as they polished the stone floors for people who would never notice the effort. Verk stood beneath the wall and let his 4 eyes move independently across its surface. Each pair read a different section at the same time. It was a habit. His mother insisted it was rude. His father insisted it was efficient. Both were probably right. Verk stopped beneath the newest engraving. Thel Confederacy, Class of 418, Top Graduate, Commander Irsk, Perfect Tactical Score, Perfect Logistics Score, Perfect Strategic Simulation. Rescue Evaluation 92. Verk's lower eyes narrowed. A score of 92 was exceptional. It was also the highest rescue evaluation recorded in nearly 80 years. His father had earned 53. The number had followed their family for decades. Not publicly. The REL considered the discussion of personal failure an unnecessary burden imposed upon others, but numbers endured whether spoken or not. Verk's father had never commanded another fleet after the Kesh refuge convoy. Officially, the mission had failed because of mechanical complications. Unofficially, lives that should have been saved had not been. Verk had never asked what happened. Among the REL, old failures were treated like scars, visible, acknowledged, never touched. Footsteps echoed through the hall. Verk looked away from the wall. The approaching cadet was large even by Academy standards. He had broad shoulders, 4 arms, and dark emerald chitin that reflected the overhead lights in smooth bands. Talon Irix waved with 2 hands while balancing an overflowing breakfast tray with the other 2. "You know," Talon said, "one day you're going to smile while looking at that wall." "I doubt it. You say that every morning. I've known you for 3 weeks. "Exactly," Talon grinned. "You've been remarkably consistent." He held out a steaming cup. Verk accepted it with suspicion. "What is this?" "Tea. It smells terrible. So does your nutritional paste. It is efficient. So is eating insulation foam." They left the old hall and continued toward the dining chamber. Around them, the Academy had begun to wake. Cadets hurried between buildings with data pads tucked under their arms and uniforms only partially fastened. Several carried breakfast rolls between their teeth while instructors pretended not to notice. Representatives from more than 60 civilizations filled the campus. Towering hexaptal Bryn moved through the corridors in disciplined groups. Graceful lore passed beneath the high arches, their feathered crests shifting color with every change in emotion. Compact Darren communicated through speech, gesture, and faint alterations in scent. Beyond the Academy's glass walls, obstacle courses vanished into the morning mist. Dropships rose from distant landing pads, their engines sending low vibrations through the stone beneath Verk's boots. Somewhere a siren announced the beginning of another training rotation. The Academy never truly slept. It merely changed shifts. Talon glanced around before lowering his voice. "So." Verk continued walking. "So. The human arrives today." Several nearby conversations faltered, not enough to be called silence, enough to be noticed. The word traveled strangely through the dining hall. Human. Thousands of intelligent species occupied known space. Dozens had petitioned for Academy representation. Only one new species had received an invitation this decade. "They're late," someone muttered. "They negotiated for 3 years. I heard they demanded equal evaluations. I heard they threatened to withdraw from the exchange. I heard they requested larger beds. I heard they requested smaller beds." Someone snorted. Nobody knew anything. That had never stopped cadets from pretending otherwise. Talon leaned closer. What have you heard? Very little. Nothing. Nothing reliable. That much was true. The briefing packet had been surprisingly short. Species, human, homeworld, Earth. Classification, omnivorous endurance predator. Special accommodations, none requested. That final line had generated more discussion than the rest of the document combined. No species requested no accommodations. Every civilization required something. Different gravity, different atmospheric composition, different temperature ranges, different lighting. The humans had apparently reviewed the Academy's environmental standards and replied with a single word. Acceptable, nobody believed it. The dining hall doors opened. Commander Sesh Arun entered. Every conversation died. The Academy Commandant never raised his voice. He never needed to. Tall even by the standards of his species, Arun had silver skin marked by the faint geometric patterns awarded to veterans of the frontier campaigns. His uniform looked painfully precise. Not a wrinkle interrupted the dark fabric. Not a single thread stood out of place. He surveyed the chamber once. Finish eating. No shouting. No speech, 2 words. The room accelerated. Talon swallowed nearly half his breakfast in one bite. I still think they requested larger beds. Verk almost smiled. Almost. The welcoming assembly occupied the grand orientation chamber. Nearly 1,000 cadets stood in perfect formation beneath banners representing every member civilization. The banners descended from the distant ceiling in long columns of color, each displaying the symbols, constellations, or heraldic marks of a people whose officers had trained within the Academy. One banner remained covered. The Academy Orchestra finished the opening anthem. Commander Arun stepped onto the central platform. Today, he said, the Galactic Officer Academy welcomes its newest exchange delegation. The covering fell, a field of blue, a white sphere, a ring of stars. The design was simple beside the elaborate crests surrounding it. Whispers moved through the formation. Commander Arun ignored them. Humanity has served alongside member fleets for 17 standard years. Verk considered the number. 17 years was not long. It was long enough to earn a measure of respect, not long enough to erase suspicion. The purpose of this exchange is not diplomacy, Arun continued. He allowed the silence to settle. It is evaluation. Now everyone listened. The Academy exists to determine whether officers from different civilizations can learn to command together. The candidate arriving today will be assessed by the same standards as every other cadet. Arun looked toward the chamber's main doors. She arrives now. The doors opened, every head turned. Verk had expected soldiers, heroes, veterans decorated with unfamiliar medals. Instead, one person entered carrying 2 bags, one hung over each shoulder. She was of average height for a human, though that made her small beside most of the cadets in the chamber. She wore a dark academy uniform and had short brown hair that looked faintly windswept despite the still air. She crossed the threshold, stopped, looked around once, then stepped sharply to the side. An academy worker pushing an overloaded equipment cart rolled through the space she had occupied less than a second earlier. The human nodded politely. The surprised worker nodded back without breaking stride. Then she resumed walking, tiny, ordinary. Had no one announced her arrival, Verk was not certain anyone would have noticed her. Commander Arun met her halfway across the chamber. Lieutenant Candidate Elena Mercer. Sir, welcome to the Academy. Happy to be here. No speech, no ceremonial declaration. No carefully rehearsed diplomatic performance. Arun gestured toward the assembled cadets. Meet your classmates. Elena turned toward nearly 1,000 unfamiliar faces. She smiled, not confidently, not nervously, comfortably, as though she had arrived at a new workplace instead of the most prestigious military academy in known space. Talon spoke without moving his mouth. That's the terrifying predator. I don't know. I think I could carry her. That would probably be considered impolite. Probably. Commander Arun continued the orientation, outlining academy expectations and directing cadets toward their assigned instructors. The formation began to separate. Elena adjusted the bags on her shoulders and started after her group. Then she stopped again. She looked toward the ceiling, toward an emergency exit, toward a maintenance access panel, toward a second emergency exit. Her fingers moved subtly as she counted something. Only then did she continue. Verk watched her catch up with the others. Talon glanced at him. What? Nothing. What did she do? I'm not sure. He truly was, but Verk had seen experienced officers enter unfamiliar buildings before. They did not study the decorations. They studied the exits. For reasons he could not explain, that small observation remained with him long after orientation began. Here is the revised Chapter 2, preserving the original events, character dynamics, and HFY setup while tightening the prose and strengthening the sensory detail. Chapter 2. The Cadet Who Stopped. Lieutenant Candidate Elena Mercer spent her first morning at the Galactic Officer Academy getting lost. Not dramatically. She did not wander into a restricted hangar, enter a hostile atmosphere laboratory, or mistake an airlock for a washroom. She simply arrived at room 12C 7 minutes early, discovered that the room numbers changed halfway down the corridor, and spent the next 10 minutes following signs that appeared to disagree with one another. Verk found her standing beneath a directory display with both travel bags still slung over her shoulders. The screen showed 6 routes to the same destination. Elena studied them in silence. Then she looked at him. Does this building move? No. Are you certain? Yes. Then whoever designed it was angry. Talon stood beside Verk, holding a paper packet filled with something fried and glistening with oil. Room 12C is in the West Instructional Wing, he said. Elena pointed at the directory. That says East. The East Corridor takes you west. She stared at him. That sentence should not exist. Talon held out the packet. Breakfast. I already ate. That wasn't the question. Elena took one of the fried pieces. Verk watched her bite into it. Talon watched too. Most species reacted strongly to sarkin pepper oil. Even the Bryn, who considered consuming mildly toxic plants a sign of character, approached it cautiously. Elena chewed, swallowed, then took another piece. Talon's mandibles parted. Too hot? No. You're crying. That's unrelated. It began immediately after you ate it. Elena wiped one eye with the back of her hand. I'm having an emotional morning. Talon looked pleased. I like her. Verk turned toward the west corridor. Your orientation group begins physical assessment in 9 minutes. Elena adjusted the bags on her shoulders. Lead the way. They reached the changing hall with 3 minutes remaining. The Academy's training uniforms had been designed by a committee representing 27 species, and as a result, fit none of them particularly well. Verk's collar pressed against the lower edges of his throat scales. Talon's uniform had 4 sleeves, but one was noticeably shorter than the others. Elena emerged from the changing stall wearing dark gray training clothes with the sleeves rolled twice and the waist cinched with a spare cord. Talon examined her. Did they issue the wrong size? They issued the closest size. Is that normal? For military clothing? She tightened the cord. Yes. The cadets assembled outside beneath a pale morning sky. The academy occupied the northern edge of the Vassir Plateau, where low black mountains enclosed a broad expanse of training fields. Mist clung to the obstacle courses, softening the outlines of walls, towers, and suspended platforms. The air smelled of wet stone, engine exhaust, and the sharp resin of the silverleaf trees planted along the perimeter. 300 first-year cadets stood in formation. An instructor paced before them. Major Kelvaro was Bryn, with 6 powerful legs and a broad upper body covered in short bronze fur. His species had evolved beneath heavy gravity on vast, open plains. Their military traditions valued speed, direct action, and the ability to remain standing after being struck by something large. His voice carried across the field without amplification. Today's course measures mobility, judgment, endurance, and obedience. Talon murmured, 4 things I avoid whenever possible. Verk kept his eyes forward. You should not speak during a briefing. I speak quietly during briefings. That is still speaking. Major Varro stopped. One dark eye settled on Talon. Cadet Erix. Yes, Major. Would you like to share your strategic insight? No, Major. Disappointing. I was hoping to learn something. Several cadets laughed. Talon bowed his head. Verk kept his expression still. Elena did not laugh. She was studying the obstacle field. The course began with a vertical ascent wall nearly 15 meters high. Beyond it waited a sequence of suspended platforms, flooded trenches, rotating barriers, a low-gravity crossing chamber, and a final uphill sprint beneath artificial rain. Medical stations stood along the route. So did instructors. The assessment was scored by time. Major Varro explained the safety rules. Cadets could withdraw at any point. Helping another cadet was permitted. The clock would not stop. A warning light flashed above the starting line. Verk adjusted his footing. His father had once told him that first impressions lasted longer than facts. Verk intended to make a useful one. Beside him, Elena drew one leg behind her and stretched. Nothing in the movement suggested fear. Nothing suggested confidence either. She simply prepared. Talon leaned toward her. Are humans fast? Some. Are you? Not especially. Strong. Depends what needs lifting. That is a very human answer. The starting tone sounded. 300 cadets surged forward. Verk accelerated cleanly. The Rel were not built for explosive speed, but their 4 eyes gave them exceptional depth judgment. He reached the ascent wall near the front of the field, placed his hands precisely, and climbed without wasting movement. Talon passed him halfway up. 4 arms helped. Talon glanced down. This feels unfair. It is. Good. Elena reached the wall several seconds later. She did not leap. She did not display some impossible burst of human strength. She found the handholds and climbed, quickly enough, nothing more. Verk crossed the top and descended the far side. By the suspended platforms, the field had begun to separate. The fastest Bryn and Lore pulled ahead. Verk remained within the top 20. Talon followed close behind. Elena had fallen somewhere into the middle group. Verk forgot about her. The Academy had ranked every incoming cadet through written examinations, tactical aptitude tests, physical evaluations, and command history. Verk had entered 9th. Talon had entered 34th. Elena had entered 298th. Last. The Academy had included her human service record, but had been unable to translate most of it into the Council's scoring system. Her previous assignment was listed as Maritime Response. Her specialty codes had no recognized equivalents. Her command history showed no fleet engagements. Her tactical record was incomplete. Whatever humanity had sent, the ranking board had concluded that it was not particularly impressive. Verk reached the flooded trench. Cold water rose to his chest. The floor shifted beneath his boots while pressure jets fired from the walls without warning, hurling cadets sideways. Adarin lost balance and disappeared beneath the surface. An instructor pulled them out before Verk could react. The clock continued. That was the purpose of the course. Move, adapt, continue. The phrase had been painted above the trench exit. Verk climbed out and ran. He crossed the rotating barriers without being struck and entered the low-gravity chamber in 11th place. Through the transparent walls, he saw other cadets arriving behind him. Talon bounced off the ceiling, corrected himself with 2 hands, and waved with a third. Verk ignored him. The chamber door opened. Normal gravity returned. Talon dropped badly, rolled across one shoulder, and rose without slowing. You saw nothing, he said. I saw several things. Forget them. They entered the final section. Artificial rain poured from overhead in silver sheets. The uphill path turned slick beneath their boots. Verk's muscles burned. His breathing remained controlled. 7 cadets were ahead of him. He could still finish inside the top 10. A warning horn sounded behind them, not the end signal, a medical alert. Verk glanced back. Through the rain, a cadet lay beside the rotating barriers. A Lore, blue-white feathers spread across the mud. One leg had twisted beneath her at an angle it should never have reached. An instructor was already moving toward her. The course remained active. Verk turned forward. The Academy trained officers, not medics. Safety personnel would handle it. That was why they were present. Talon continued beside him. Neither slowed. They crossed the finish line together. Verk placed 8th. Talon placed 9th. Major Varro recorded their times. Acceptable. Coming from him, it sounded almost generous. Verk stepped aside and tried to steady his breathing. Cadets continued arriving. 20th, 30th, 40th, no Elena. Talon looked back toward the course. Maybe humans are slow. They classified her as endurance adapted. That does not mean fast. No. The rain thickened. Verk watched the rotating barriers. The injured Lore remained on the ground. The medical instructor had reached her. Another figure knelt in the mud beside them. Human, Elena had stopped. Even from a distance, Verk could see her speaking to the injured cadet. The Lore's crest had faded almost white with fear. Elena placed one hand against the cadet's shoulder while the instructor prepared a stabilizing brace. One of the padded barriers swung toward them. Elena shifted without looking and caught the rotating arm against both forearms. The impact drove her boots deep into the mud. For an instant, the muscles in her shoulders locked and the barrier trembled between them. She held it long enough for the instructor to drag the injured cadet clear. Then she let it pass. Talon leaned forward. That looked painful. It probably was. Elena helped lift the lore onto a field stretcher. The instructor said something to her. Elena shook her head, pointed toward the finish line, and started running again. By the time she crossed, most of the class had already finished. Her uniform was soaked through. Mud covered one side of her face. One forearm had begun to swell where the barrier had struck it. Major Varro checked the display. Cadet Mercer. Yes, Major. You ranked 274th. Better than yesterday. A few cadets laughed. The Major did not. You surrendered more than 6 minutes. The cadet needed stabilization. Medical staff were present. 1 medic. 1 was sufficient. Elena looked toward the field stretcher. The injured lore was awake. Her crest had begun returning to its natural violet. She was panicking. Major Varro's gaze hardened. Your task was to complete the course. I completed it. Slowly. Yes, Major. You believe your decision was correct. Elena drew a breath. Verk expected justification, a speech about human compassion, an argument. Instead, she said, I believe I made it. Major Varro studied her. What does that mean? It means the decision is mine, so is the score. The nearby cadets fell silent. Major Varro looked toward the medical station, then back at Elena. Report to evaluation hall at 1600. Yes, Major. He dismissed her. Talon waited until they were walking away. Was that good? No, Verk said. I thought it sounded good. That is not the same thing. Elena joined them, flexing her injured arm. Talon pointed at the swelling. Is that broken? No. Are you certain? No. That seems important. I've got another one. Talon looked at Verk. I continue to like her. Steam clouded the locker hall. Cadets filled the long chamber with conversation, the clatter of equipment lockers, and the hiss of drying vents. Nearby, the injured lore's classmates spoke in low voices. One glanced toward Elena, dipped her feathered crest in thanks, and looked away before Elena could respond. Elena sat on a bench and examined the bruise spreading across her forearm. Verk stood opposite her. You knew the instructor would reach her. Yes. You knew medical personnel were assigned to the course. Yes. You knew stopping would damage your score. Yes. Then why stop? Elena looked up, because she was alone. She was not alone. The instructor was present. He was working on the leg. That is his duty. And I was talking to her. That was not yours. Elena considered him. No. Verk waited. She added nothing. That irritated him. Then why? Because I could. Verk's lower eyes narrowed. That is not command logic. Probably not. What kind of logic is it? The kind that helps someone breathe, while a stranger straps their leg into a brace. Talon sat beside her. I dislike medical braces. Most people do. I once bit a medic. Did it help? No. Did it make you feel better? A little. Elena nodded. Then I understand. Verk turned toward his locker. He told himself the conversation was finished. It should have been. Yet that evening, when the preliminary rankings updated, he searched for her name. Cadet Verk. Physical assessment, 8th. Overall Academy rank, 11. Cadet Talon Irix. Physical assessment, 9th. Overall Academy rank, 31. Lieutenant Candidate Elena Mercer. Physical assessment, 274th. Overall Academy rank, 300, still last. A notation appeared beside her result, failure to prioritize assigned objective. Verk stared at the words. They were accurate. He had watched her surrender time. He had heard the instructions. He had seen medical staff respond. She had chosen something outside the objective. The academy was correct. So why did the notation feel incomplete? The dining hall served 9 different protein options and somehow made all of them taste alike. Verk ate nutritional paste. Talon tried 3 meals and disliked them equally. Elena arrived carrying a tray filled with food from 6 different species. Verk looked at it. You know those are not meant to be combined. They're on the same tray. That does not make them compatible. She dipped a strip of sarkin flatbread into Rel mineral broth. Talon watched with fascination. How is it? Elena chewed carefully. Complicated. That means bad, Verk said. It means I haven't decided. She took another bite. The three sat near a wide window overlooking the training fields. The artificial rain had stopped, and maintenance crews reset the barriers beneath the orange light of sunset. Across the grounds, the injured Lore moved toward the medical wing using a support frame. Two classmates walked beside her. Elena watched until they disappeared inside. Talon followed her gaze. You know her? No. You stopped anyway. Elena looked at him. Wouldn't you? Talon opened his mandibles, closed them, then stared down at his food. I would like to say yes. That's not what she asked, Verk said. Talon pointed at him with a fork. I'm thinking. Elena smiled and returned to her impossible meal. Verk looked toward the wall of distinction, visible through the far archway. Thousands of names. Thousands of officers remembered for decisions made under pressure. He wondered how many of them had once surrendered 6 minutes for something the Academy did not score. He wondered whether his father had. The thought arrived without permission. Verk pushed it away. Across the table, Elena tasted the broth again. This is better with the bread. It is not meant to be eaten with bread. Maybe that's the problem. Verk looked at her. With the broth. With the rules. He disliked the answer immediately, mostly because he suspected he would remember it. Here is the revised Chapter 3, preserving the original plot, dialogue, and character arcs while tightening pacing, sharpening command conflict, and strengthening the rescue sequence. Chapter 3, The Wrong Objective. The Academy's first tactical command exercise took place inside a city that did not exist. Cadets entered through separate simulation chambers. Neural bands translated movement into virtual terrain, replacing white walls and polished floors with streets, weather, heat, and violence. Within seconds, the Academy vanished. Verk stood in the middle of a ruined transit plaza beneath a gray sky. Rainwater flowed between cracked paving stones. Residential towers crowded the square, their upper floors disappearing into low cloud and drifting smoke. Far overhead, 2 simulated warships traded fire beyond the clouds, each distant impact rolling across the city like buried thunder. The detail impressed him. The Academy had recreated the wind funneling between the buildings, the bite of cold rain against his face, civilian broadcasts echoing from damaged speakers, and even the acrid smell of electrical insulation burning somewhere underground. Talon appeared beside him in simulated combat armor. He looked down at his 4 hands. I have fewer weapons than expected. You have 3. I have 4 hands. 1 is for balance. That sounds inefficient. Elena materialized near the entrance to the damaged transit station. Her armor was smaller than theirs, dark and plain, without ornament or visible specialization. She checked the weapon secured at her side. Then she surveyed the buildings around them, not the sky, not the obvious enemy positions. The buildings, Verk noticed. Again, a tactical display appeared above the plaza. Scenario, VORAS Insurgency. Primary objective, capture enemy command center. Secondary objective, disable communication relay. Time limit, 90 minutes. The remaining members of their 5-cadet squad appeared around them. Cadet Sierra Tell, a Lore whose feathered crest held a deep, focused red. Cadet Boron Cass, a broad brin whose armored bulk made him look like a mobile barricade. Verk had been assigned command. He had expected it. His academy rank made him the obvious choice. An instructor's voice entered their helmets. Begin. Verk opened the tactical map. The enemy command center occupied a municipal tower 6 blocks away. The communications relay stood on the roof of the adjacent structure. 2 routes were marked. A direct approach along the transit boulevard, a longer route through the residential sectors. Verk selected the boulevard. Formation. Boron took point. Talon followed with heavy support. Sierra moved behind him. Elena fell into the rear position without complaint. They advanced. The boulevard had once been designed for public transport. Now overturned vehicles blocked the lanes, broken glass glittered beneath the rain, and simulated civilians moved through side streets carrying bags, children, and whatever possessions they had been able to save. A warning broadcast repeated from damaged speakers. Remain indoors. Security operations are in progress. Nobody remained indoors. That felt realistic. The first enemy fire came from the third floor of an office building. Verk caught the muzzle flash with his upper right eye. Contact, high window. Boron dropped behind an overturned transport. Talon fired 2 controlled bursts. The window shattered. Sierra launched a surveillance drone. Elena moved to the opposite side of the street and covered the alley before anyone ordered her to. The squad advanced cleanly. No casualties, no wasted movement. Verk felt the exercise settle into something familiar. Threat, response, movement. He had trained for this since childhood. At the second intersection, 2 insurgents emerged from behind a delivery vehicle. Elena fired first. Her first shot struck one attacker's weapon. Her second hit the other in the upper chest. Both dissolved into simulation static. Talon glanced toward her. That was quick. They were close. You shot the weapon. I missed the person. You say that as though it is less impressive. It usually is. They reached the first checkpoint 12 minutes ahead of projected time. Verk's confidence grew. The direct route was working. The command tower stood only 3 blocks away. Then a civilian ran into the street. Small, Lore, a child's simulation. Her feathered crest had faded almost white with fear. She shouted something the translation system could not immediately interpret and pointed toward a residential tower across the boulevard. Smoke poured from its lower floors. Verk raised one hand. Hold fire. Elena moved toward the child. Verk caught her shoulder. Maintain formation. There are people inside. The building is outside the objective. The translator resolved the child's words. My family. She pointed again. Please. Verk looked toward the timer. 71 minutes remained. The command center was close. Academy exercises often included distractions, false distress calls, misleading civilians, simulated moral pressure designed to fracture decision-making. The correct response was to identify the mission priority and continue. Transmit the location to civil response, he said. The child gripped Elena's armored sleeve. There is no civil response, Elena said. There will be after we secure the district. Smoke thickened above the building. A window shattered 10 floors up. A figure appeared through the smoke, leaned out, then vanished back inside. Talon shifted uneasily. Boron looked toward the command tower. Sierra's crest darkened with uncertainty. Verk kept his voice level. The insurgent command center controls this district. Capturing it will prevent further casualties. Elena looked at the tower, then at the burning building. How long will that take? 30 minutes. They don't have 30. You cannot know that. No. She removed his hand from her shoulder. But I know what smoke does. Verk stepped in front of her. You are under my command. Yes. Then follow the objective. Elena's expression did not harden. That almost made it worse. I am following the emergency. The emergency is the insurgency. The emergency is whoever dies first. Verk felt the rest of the squad watching. His father's voice returned from years earlier. An officer who allows the mission to fragment loses control of the outcome. Verk believed that. The academy believed it. Every tactical manual believed it. He opened the squad channel. We proceed to the command center. Elena did not move. Cadet Mercer. Sir, that was an order. I heard it. Then obey. Smoke rolled across the boulevard. The Lore child coughed. Elena removed her rifle and handed it to Talon. Hold this. Talon accepted it automatically, then stared at the weapon in his hand. What are you doing? Failing the exercise. She ran toward the burning tower. Verk froze for half a second. Anger came first, disbelief followed. Mercer returned to formation. She did not answer. Elena crossed the street, forced open the damaged entrance, and disappeared into the smoke. The child tried to follow. Boron caught her before she reached the door. Verk looked toward the command center. 3 blocks, 69 minutes. They could continue with 4 cadets. They could still win. The correct decision was obvious, so why had no one moved? Talon held Elena's rifle in one hand. His other 3 arms hung uselessly at his sides. Sierra looked toward Verk. Orders. He heard the uncertainty in her voice. Not doubt about the mission, doubt about him. Verk pointed toward the command tower. We continue. Talon remained where he was. You heard him, Boran said. Yes. Then move. Talon looked at the burning building. She gave me her weapon. That was her choice. It is a very nice weapon. Verk stared at him. That is irrelevant. I know. Talon's mandibles tightened. It just feels wrong to leave with it. Verk wanted to shout. He never shouted. Rel officers did not raise their voices in public. Losing control of the voice suggested the mind had already followed. Cadet Mercer knowingly abandoned the objective. Sierra's crest dimmed. She also entered a burning building alone. That is not our mission. Glass shattered above the entrance. Flames appeared behind the lower windows. Verk looked at the timer again. 68 minutes. Only 1 minute lost. He thought of Elena kneeling in the mud beside an injured stranger while the course continued around her. Because she was alone, the words arrived fully formed. Verk hated them. He opened the tactical channel. Revised objective. Boran turned, Sir. Civilian extraction. The words felt like failure. They also felt like relief. Talon, establish entry control. Sierra, map interior heat with the drone. Boran, secure the street. He took Elena's rifle from Talon and handed it back. You are coming with me. Talon's posture lifted. I was hoping you would say that. They entered the tower. The simulation reproduced smoke too well. Visibility fell to less than 2 meters. Heat pressed through Verk's armor and every breath tasted of ash and scorched metal. His 4 eyes became a disadvantage. Each received a different blur of smoke, sparks, and pulsing emergency light. He closed the upper pair. The world simplified. Talon crawled behind him, scraping 2 shoulders against the corridor walls. This building was designed by narrow people. Stop talking. It helps me breathe. Then talk quietly. They found Elena on the 2nd floor. She had torn a wall panel loose and braced it between herself and the worst of the heat. 3 civilians crouched behind her. The child's family, 1 adult, 2 smaller children. Elena looked surprised to see them. Thought you had an objective. It changed. That allowed. No. She smiled through the smoke. Good. Sierra's drone fed an interior map into their helmets. 12 additional life signs remained above them. The central stairwell had collapsed. Elena pointed toward a maintenance passage. Service stairs. Verk checked the map. They do not reach the upper residences. They reach the ventilation deck. That is not the same place. Close enough. That phrase is not tactical language. It is in rescue work. They moved. Talon carried 2 children. Boran remained at the entrance, pulling civilians through the smoke one at a time. Outside, Sierra guided them around spreading heat pockets. Verk and Elena climbed. On the 4th floor, they found an elderly Darren attempting to drag a sealed family sent archive larger than their entire body. Elena took one side. Verk took the other. What is this? He asked. Family history. It weighs 30 kilograms. So does history. They carried it anyway. By the 7th floor, Verk's suit temperature warning had begun flashing. The timer continued. 59 minutes. Enemy forces were repositioning around the command center. The primary objective remained available. They were losing it. Verk no longer cared. That disturbed him more than the heat. They found the remaining civilians in a communal dining room. A collapsed ceiling beam blocked the exit. Talon planted all 4 hands beneath it. Finally. Verk looked at him. Finally what? Something appropriately heavy. He lifted. The beam rose with a groan. Elena pulled civilians beneath it one by one. The last was a Bryn child who refused to move without a small cooking pot clutched against their chest. Verk stared at it. The child held it tighter. Elena took the pot. The child followed immediately. Verk did not ask. They descended through the service stairwell. Halfway down, simulated gunfire struck the outer wall. The insurgents had arrived. Sierra's voice entered the channel. 6 hostiles entering the boulevard. Boran answered, I have them. A heavy weapon opened fire outside. The building trembled. Talon sounded pleased. Boran sounds happy. He is Bryn. That means they are happiest when standing between danger and something smaller. Elena glanced toward Verk. That sounds familiar. He ignored the comment. At the 2nd floor landing, 2 insurgents entered through a side access door. Elena had no weapon. Verk raised his rifle. The first attacker fired. Elena moved before he did. She struck the weapon aside, drove her shoulder into the attacker's chest, and slammed them into the wall hard enough to crack the simulated plaster. The second attacker swung a short baton. Elena caught the wrist, turned, used the attacker's momentum. The insurgent hit the floor. She took the baton and struck once. Both enemies dissolved into static. Talon stared at her. "You could have done that earlier." "I was carrying a scent archive." Verk lowered his rifle. The entire exchange had lasted less than 3 seconds. "Your file listed maritime response." "It was a broad job. That was not rescue technique. It was not my favorite part." She handed him the baton. "Still useful." They reached the street with 19 civilians. The original child ran toward her family. The simulation did not simplify the reunion. The adult dropped to their knees. The children collided with them, feathered crests pressing together as their bodies folded into a trembling knot. For several seconds, no one moved. The Academy had included that detail too. Verk wondered whether the evaluators expected them to see it. A distant explosion rolled between the towers. The tactical display updated. Enemy command center evacuating. Primary objective failure imminent. 34 minutes remained. Verk turned toward his squad. The civilians were safe. The command center was still within reach. "We move." Elena retrieved her rifle from Talon. "You're still going?" "Yes." She studied the tower. The insurgents were withdrawing. The direct route was blocked by fresh enemy positions. They had surrendered time, firepower, surprise, everything the Academy measured. "Then we need another approach," she said. Verk opened the map. The residential tower's ventilation deck connected to an old utility conduit beneath the boulevard. The conduit emerged inside the command center's service level. He looked at Elena. "You noticed that earlier." "I notice exits." "That is not an exit." "Depends which direction you're going." They left Sierra and Boron with the civilians. Verk, Elena, and Talon entered the utility conduit. The passage was barely wide enough for Talon. He complained continuously. Verk allowed it. They reached the command tower with 11 minutes remaining. The insurgents expected an attack from the boulevard. They did not expect 3 cadets to emerge from a maintenance hatch beneath the communications room. Verk shot the first guard. Elena shot the second. Talon lifted the third from the floor and put them through a simulated table. They disabled the relay, captured the command officer, secured the tower. The timer stopped with 52 seconds remaining. For one brief moment, Verk believed they had succeeded. Then the city vanished. The Academy simulation chamber returned around them. The squad stood inside a ring of white light. Commander Arun waited beyond the platform. Major Varro stood beside him. Neither looked pleased. The final score appeared overhead. Primary objective completed. Secondary objective completed. Civilians evacuated, 19. Tactical efficiency, 41%. Command discipline, failure. Overall result, failed. Talon looked up at the display. "We completed everything." Major Varro stepped forward. "You abandoned the assigned route." "The building was occupied," Verk said. "You allowed a subordinate to redefine your mission." Verk looked toward Elena. She remained still. The major continued. "You surrendered operational initiative." "We captured the command center after the enemy began evacuating." "We captured the commander." With 52 seconds remaining. Verk's throat scales tightened, "But we completed the objective." Commander Arun spoke for the first time. "No." The commandant walked toward him. "You completed several tasks." Verk forced himself to meet Arun's eyes. "Sir, an officer's duty is not to collect victories after surrendering control." His gaze shifted toward Elena. "Lieutenant Candidate Mercer." "Yes, sir." "You disobeyed your squad commander." "Yes, sir." "You entered an unstable structure without authorization." "Yes, sir." "You compromised the squad's primary objective." "Yes, sir." "Would you make the same decision again?" The chamber became completely still. Elena looked toward Verk, not for permission, not for rescue, only acknowledgement. Then she faced the commandant. "Yes, sir." Major Varro's expression hardened. Commander Arun S. did not change. Why? Because the civilians were real enough to die in the exercise. They were simulations. The decision was. Something shifted behind Commander Arun's eyes. Not agreement. Recognition, perhaps. It disappeared almost immediately. This academy does not evaluate intentions. No, sir. We evaluate command. Yes, sir. And your command discipline is unacceptable. Yes, sir. Verk looked at the score again. Failure. His first command exercise failed. His academy rank would drop. The wall of distinction felt very far away. Commander Arun dismissed the others but ordered Verk to remain. Talon touched 2 fingers to Verk's shoulder as he passed. Elena stopped beside him. I'm sorry. He looked at her. Are you? She considered the question. I'm sorry you received the score. That is not the same thing. No. He had expected that answer. It still irritated him. When the others had gone, Commander Arun stood beside Verk beneath the glowing failure notice. You allowed her to change your decision. Yes, sir. Why? Verk considered the official answers. Incomplete intelligence, changing battlefield conditions, civilian risk. None felt true enough, because she was right. Commander Arun's silver features remained unreadable. That is a dangerous answer. I know. Do you? The commandant walked around the edge of the simulation platform. Your father once believed he was right. All 4 of Verk's eyes focused on him. The words struck harder than the reprimand. You knew my father. I reviewed the inquiry into the Kesh refuge convoy. Verk said nothing. Among the rel, old failures were visible, never touched. Commander Arun touched it anyway. Your father delayed withdrawal to continue loading civilians. Verk knew that much. He lost 3 escort ships. Yes, sir. He saved 12 refugee transports. Verk stared at him. The official record never emphasized that part. Arun continued. The inquiry concluded that he violated withdrawal doctrine. That is why he never commanded again. Yes. Was the decision wrong? Commander Arun looked toward the empty simulation field. History is rarely kind enough to answer that cleanly. Verk's throat scales darkened. Then what am I supposed to learn from it? That command is not obedience. The answer surprised him. Arun faced him. It is responsibility. For the mission. For your people. For those affected by your orders. And for the cost when those obligations conflict. He pointed toward the failure score. You did not fail because you rescued civilians. Verk waited. You failed because you surrendered command before deciding to rescue them. Verk understood. Elena had acted, he had followed. The distinction mattered. You believe the rescue was correct. I believe your reasoning arrived too late. Commander Arun turned away. Cadet Mercer's problem is different. What problem? She has already decided what an officer is for. Arun looked toward the sealed exit. This academy will either broaden that belief or break it. Verk remembered Elena disappearing into smoke without a weapon. Which do you prefer? The geometric markings on Arun's silver skin caught the cold light. My preference is irrelevant. Verk suspected that was not true. The rankings updated before the evening meal. Verk fell from 11th to 47th. Talon dropped from 31st to 70th. Sierra and Boron lost several positions. Elena remained last. A second notation appeared beside her name. Repeated failure to prioritize assigned objective. The dining hall buzzed with discussion. Cadets had already watched the simulation recording. Some criticized Verk, more criticized Elena. A few claimed the human had deliberately sabotaged her squad to make a moral point. Elena sat at their usual table, opening a small foil packet. Talon joined her. What is that? Peanut butter. It looks like sealant. It tastes better. That is a low standard. Verk sat across from them. Conversation at the nearby tables quieted. Elena handed him the packet. He smelled it. Why? You've had a bad day. This is food. Technically. He tasted a small amount. It adhered instantly to the roof of his mouth. Talon watched with visible delight. Verk attempted to speak. Nothing useful happened. Elena pushed a cup of water toward him. He drank. That is hostile. It grows on you. It has already attached itself. Talon made a rapid clicking sound that translated as laughter. For the first time that day, Verk laughed too, only once, quietly. It was enough to make Elena smile. Across the hall, the Academy rankings glowed above the entrance. Elena Mercer, last place. Again. Around her, cadets whispered about the human who could fight but would not follow orders. The human who surrendered scores for strangers. The human who looked at every mission and somehow found another objective hidden inside it. Verk no longer believed she was weak. He was beginning to suspect something worse. She might be right. And if she was, then the Academy had spent centuries teaching officers how to win without ever deciding what victory was supposed to save. Here is the revised Chapter 4, Preserving the Academy Exercise, Sector 7 Setup, Vora's Attack, and the Transition from Simulation to Genuine Command. Chapter 4, The Exercise That Became Real. For the next 6 weeks, Elena Mercer remained at the bottom of the Academy rankings. She improved in weapons training. She improved in strategy. She even finished 23rd in a night navigation course after discovering that humans could distinguish certain terrain features under low light better than several species with objectively superior vision. None of it mattered. Every improvement was followed by another notation: unnecessary deviation from assigned route. Excessive concern for simulated casualties. Failure to preserve tactical resources. Unauthorized modification of evacuation plan. That last incident had involved a maintenance vehicle, 200 meters of emergency cable, and a Brin instructor who spent the entire debrief pretending not to be impressed. Verk climbed back to 18th. Talon stabilized at 62nd after reluctantly accepting that heavy weapons examinations rewarded accuracy more than enthusiasm. Sierra reached 41st. Boron reached 37th. Elena remained 300th. Every morning the rankings displayed her name at the bottom of the dining hall wall. Every morning she ate breakfast beneath it. She seemed less troubled by the number than anyone else. That troubled Verk. "You should care," he told her one morning. Elena was spreading peanut butter across a piece of Sarkin flatbread. "I do." "You do not behave as though you do." "What should I do?" "Appear concerned." She looked up. "I'm concerned." "You are eating." "I can do both." Talon lowered himself onto the bench with 4 cups balanced between his hands. "She is very talented." Verk ignored him. "The final command evaluations begin today. If you finish last, the Academy may terminate the exchange." "I read the notice. And I would prefer that not happen." Elena folded the flatbread in half. Verk waited. "But," he asked, "there isn't a but." "There is always a but." "No, sometimes there's breakfast." Talon slid one of the cups toward her. "Tea?" Elena smelled it cautiously. "Is this the one that made my tongue numb?" "That was medicinal." "You told me it was traditional." "Traditional medicine." Verk pressed both palms against the table. "Can either of you take anything seriously?" Talon considered the question. "I took the weapons examination seriously." "You attempted to name the cannon." "It performed better after encouragement." Elena took a careful drink. Her eyes watered immediately. "This is the same tea." Talon looked delighted. Verk sat back. Beyond the dining hall windows, the Academy grounds had been transformed. Emergency beacons lined the pathways. Temporary shelters occupied the central parade field. Medical tents stood beside the hangars, their white roofs bright beneath the pale morning sky. Training drones moved overhead carrying smoke generators, casualty mannequins, and sealed equipment crates. The Academy's final rescue command exercise was the only evaluation conducted across the entire campus. Cadets would be divided into command groups. Instructors would simulate structural collapses, transport accidents, fires, communications failures, and civilian panic. The objective was not simply to rescue the greatest number of people. It was to maintain control while conditions worsened. The exercise lasted 12 hours. No class had ever completed it without fatalities. Simulated fatalities, officially. The Academy displayed the names of every lost casualty during the final debrief. Verk's father had once told him that simulated names were useful. They taught officers to feel the weight of failure without requiring anyone to die. Verk had been 9 years old when his father said it. He had not understood why the man left the room immediately afterward. A tone sounded through the dining hall. Cadets rose. Commander Arun appeared on the central display. Final year command groups will report to their assigned sectors. First-year cadets will report to support stations. A list filled the screen. Verk found his name. Sector 7, Transit and Residential Complex. Acting Sector Commander, Cadet Varek. His throat scales tightened. Talon leaned over his shoulder. I am assigned to you. So am I, Sierra said from the next table. Boron checked his display. Same. Verk searched the remaining names. Lieutenant Candidate Elena Mercer. Sector 7, Medical and Evacuation Support. Elena finished the last bite of flatbread. Looks like you're stuck with me. Verk stared at the assignment. The instructors had placed her under his command again. That was deliberate. Commander Aaron continued. Today's exercise measures judgment under uncertainty. Information will be incomplete. Resources will be insufficient. Casualties will exceed your ability to prevent them. The dining hall quieted. Your task is not perfection. Aaron paused. It is command. The display went dark. Talon collected the empty cups. I liked breakfast better. Sector 7 occupied the Academy's oldest residential quarter. 6 dormitory towers, 2 lecture halls, a transit station, a maintenance depot, and an underground utility network constructed when the Academy housed fewer than a third of its current population. The buildings crowded around a series of narrow courtyards. Old stone walls supported newer glass additions, and enclosed walkways connected towers that had never been designed to stand together. Every generation had expanded the district without removing anything built by the one before it. Elena studied the sector map as they walked. This place is a trap. Verk looked at her. It has passed every structural inspection. That isn't what I meant. What did you mean? 1 primary transit route, 2 vehicle entrances. Half the underground passages don't match the current plans. She pointed toward a service alley between 2 residence towers, and those buildings share ventilation. Sierra's crest shifted yellow with interest. How can you tell? The intake housings. You examined the ventilation system during the walk from breakfast. Elena shrugged. It was there. Talon carried the sector command kit in 2 hands and a bag of pastries in a third. Verk looked at his remaining hand. What is the 4th one for? Emergencies. You are carrying pastries. Exactly. They reached the sector command post. Major Varro waited beside a portable tactical table. 28 first-year cadets stood assembled around him. Behind them, Academy staff dressed as civilians moved through the district. Some carried luggage. Some argued loudly with one another. One elderly instructor stood near the transit entrance demanding to know whether the exercise would interfere with lunch. Major Varro surveyed the cadets. The scenario begins in 7 minutes. He indicated the tactical display. Sector 7 contains approximately 1,100 simulated residents. You have 2 medical teams, 3 transport vehicles, 6 fire control drones, and 1 engineering unit. Boron checked the equipment list. That is insufficient. Yes. By how much? Major Varro looked at him. Yes. Talon made an appreciative clicking sound. The major continued. Initial conditions will be provided when the exercise begins. Additional failures will occur without warning. Some reports will be inaccurate. Some civilians will resist evacuation. The elderly instructor near the transit station raised his voice. I certainly will. Nobody acknowledged him. Major Varro turned toward Verk. You are sector commander. Yes, Major. Your authority extends to every cadet and academy resource assigned to this district. His gaze shifted briefly toward Elena. Use them. Verk understood the warning. Major Varro stepped away from the tactical table. At the edge of the courtyard, Commander Aaron watched from beneath a covered observation platform. He wore no armor, only his formal uniform. Verk wondered how many cameras were following them, probably all of them. Elena moved beside him. Planned. We wait for the scenario. That's not a plan. It begins in 7 minutes. Fires don't wait until you finish thinking. This is not yet a fire. No. She looked toward the dormitory towers, which is why now is the easy part. Verk almost dismissed her. Then he remembered the burning simulation tower, her service stairs, her ventilation deck, the utility conduit that had saved their failed mission. What do you suggest? Elena pointed toward the medical station being assembled beside the transit entrance. Move that. That is the primary evacuation route, which makes it the first place to become crowded. Sierra nodded slowly. She is correct. Elena continued. Put one medical team in the Eastern Lecture Hall. It has 2 entrances and a loading bay. Keep the other mobile. Transport vehicles? Verk asked. 1 at each outer gate. Keep the 3rd unassigned. Boran looked at her. Why leave a vehicle unused? So it's available when the plan breaks. Talon raised one hand. What do I do? Elena looked at the bag of pastries. Guard critical supplies. He drew the bag against his chest. At last, recognition. Verk began issuing orders. The medical station moved. The transport vehicles repositioned. Sierra launched reconnaissance drones before the exercise officially began. Boran assigned engineering cadets to inspect the service tunnels. Elena walked the evacuation routes herself, checking doors, alleys, access panels, and loading areas. Major Varro watched without comment. Commander Arun's expression remained unreadable. The countdown reached 0. Sirens sounded. Smoke erupted from Dormitory Tower 3. The tactical display filled with alerts. Electrical fire, levels 8 through 11. Primary stairwell compromised. 37 residents unaccounted for. Verk reacted immediately. Sierra, confirm the fire location. Talon, take an evacuation team to the secondary stairwell. Elena, move the mobile medical unit to the tower entrance. Boran, cut power to the upper levels. The squad separated. Sierra's drones swept around the tower and transmitted thermal data to the tactical table. Fire confirmed on levels 9 and 10, she reported. Smoke moving through the shared ventilation system. Elena's warning returned to Verk. The towers shared ventilation. Seal the connecting ducts, he ordered. Begin precautionary evacuation of Tower 4. A notation appeared on the tactical screen. Unnecessary resource expenditure possible. Verk ignored it. Cadets poured into the residence towers. Academy staff playing civilians crowded the exits. Some followed instructions. Others argued, demanded explanations, or attempted to return for simulated belongings. One refused to leave without 6 pieces of luggage. Talon carried the civilian and all 6 bags downstairs at once. Another staff member claimed a companion was still inside but could not provide a name, room number, or species. The report proved false. 3 minutes lost. The exercise continued. Alerts multiplied. A fire control drone malfunctioned. One transport vehicle reported engine failure. A group of simulated residents refused to enter the assigned shelter because another species had already occupied it. The tactical display demanded constant decisions: which route to close, which injury to treat first, which report to believe, which resource to hold back. Verk felt the exercise tightening around him. Every problem competed with every other one. Every choice created a weakness somewhere else, but the sector did not collapse. The medical team Elena had moved away from the transit entrance remained accessible. The 3rd transport vehicle replaced the disabled one. Sierra's drones identified a smoke leak before it reached the adjoining tower. Boran's tunnel inspection teams discovered 2 blocked service passages and cleared one before it was needed. The plan bent. It did not break. 40 minutes into the exercise, an alarm sounded beneath the courtyard. A smoke charge exploded inside the underground transit station. The tactical table updated. Mass casualty event. Estimated injured, 82. Tunnel collapse possible. Verk redirected the mobile medical unit. Boran, take engineering below. Sierra, map the collapse. Talon, finish the tower evacuation and move to transit. Acknowledgements came back through the channel. Elena returned to the command post carrying a medical kit. Blood-colored simulation gel streaked one sleeve. We need to evacuate the Eastern Lecture Hall. Verk looked at the tactical display. No damage has been reported there. The derailment occurred beneath it. Structural monitors are stable. For now, he examined the building data. No stress warnings, no foundation movement, no fire, she was guessing. The exercise rewarded decisions based on available evidence. Evacuating the lecture hall unnecessarily could consume transport capacity, block the courtyard, and expose hundreds of simulated residents to other hazards. We hold, Verk said. Elena opened her mouth, then stopped. She looked toward the lecture hall. Academy staff continued their simulated lessons inside. An instructor stood at one window, calmly drinking from a cup. Elena looked down at the courtyard. "What?" Verk asked. "The birds." He followed her gaze. Small native flyers nested along the lecture hall roof. Dozens had taken flight at once. They circled above the building in a tight, agitated cloud. Verk's upper eyes shifted toward the transit station. A vibration moved through the paving stones. Low. Almost beneath perception, the tactical display showed nothing. Elena dropped the medical kit. "Evacuate it." Verk hesitated for less than a second. "All personnel clear the eastern lecture hall. Immediate evacuation." The instructor standing at the window looked annoyed. Emergency lights changed color. Cadets entered from both sides, directing civilians toward the exits and loading bay. The elderly instructor from the transit station refused to leave his seat. Talon arrived, lifted him with 2 arms, and carried him outside while the instructor complained about procedural misconduct. 30 seconds after the last resident cleared the loading bay, the lecture hall floor collapsed. Not simulated. Stone and metal vanished into the transit tunnel beneath it. The building dropped nearly a full meter. Glass exploded outward. A wave of dust rolled across the courtyard. For one suspended moment, nobody moved. The tactical table flickered, then died. The courtyard siren stopped. Every Academy communication channel vanished at once. Verk stared at the dark display. The exercise used redundant power, 3 independent communication systems. They could not all fail as part of the scenario. A second explosion rolled across the campus, not from Sector 7. From the central command building, a black column of smoke climbed above the rooftops. Commander Arun turned toward it. Major Varro touched his communicator. "Control, report." Static answered. He changed channels, nothing. Across the Academy grounds, the sirens returned. The tone had changed. Lower, 3 descending pulses. Verk had heard it only once during orientation. Actual emergency. Cadets froze. Academy personnel stopped acting. The elderly instructor in Talon's arms went completely still. Major Varro shouted for the first time Verk had ever heard. "All cadets, shelter positions. This is not an exercise." Something moved across the roofline. Small metal objects dropped into the courtyards. One struck the paving stones near the command post. It unfolded. A compact drone rose on 6 articulated legs. Its sensor head rotated toward the crowd. Commander Arun recognized it first. "Down." The drone fired. A pulse struck the observation platform. The canopy erupted in sparks. Verk hit the ground. Talon threw the elderly instructor behind a stone barrier and covered him with his own body. Boran charged the drone. Its weapon rotated toward him. Elena seized the dead tactical table and heaved it sideways into the line of fire. The next pulse struck the table. Metal flashed white. Boran reached the drone and brought both front fists down. The machine collapsed beneath him. A second drone appeared above the transit entrance. Sierra's reconnaissance unit rammed it from the side. Both machines crashed through a window. Screams spread through the courtyard, not rehearsed, not simulated. Real. Major Varro rose behind cover. "Commandant." Commander Arun lay beneath part of the collapsed observation canopy. A metal support had pinned one leg. Blood darkened the silver fabric of his uniform. Elena reached him first. She dropped beside the wound and pressed both hands against it. "Arterial." Major Varro grasped the support and attempted to lift it. It did not move. Boran joined him. Together, the 2 Brin raised the beam high enough for Elena to drag Commander Arun free. Another explosion shook the district. The western gate collapsed inward. A transport aircraft swept above the towers. It carried no Academy markings. Its rear doors opened. Armored figures descended on cables into the central grounds. Sierra's crest faded almost white. "Who are they?" Commander Arun remained conscious, though his voice had tightened with pain. "Vora's remnant." Verk stared at him, the insurgents from their command simulation. They had not been invented. The exercise had been based on a real conflict. Commander Arun caught Major Varro's sleeve. "They want the Archive Corps." "The Historical Archive?" Varro asked. "Fleet deployment records, treaty routes, emergency access codes." Arun looked toward the smoke rising from Central Command. They knew the exercise would disperse Academy security. Major Varro's face hardened. "How?" "Later." Gunfire echoed from the northern residence towers. Cadets ran in every direction. Some followed the shelter order. Others searched for instructors, classmates, or anyone who appeared to know what was happening. The command structure had vanished with the communications network. Verk looked across Sector 7. Dormitory Tower 3 still burned. The Eastern Lecture Hall had collapsed into the transit station. Dozens of casualties remained underground. More than 1,000 academy staff and cadets were scattered throughout the district. His tactical display was dead. His senior instructors were injured. His final order had been to shelter. Around him, frightened people waited for someone to decide what came next. The exercise was over. Command was not. Here is the revised Chapter 5, preserving the original evacuation, rescue mission, loading bay defense, and no civilians left behind, conclusion while tightening the action and strengthening Verk's command arc. Chapter 5. No one left in Sector 7. The utility tunnel beneath Dormitory Tower 1 had not been used in 43 years. Its entrance lay behind a false wall in an equipment storeroom filled with broken desks, obsolete breathing masks, and enough dust to suggest that no one had opened the room since the tunnel's closure. Talon hooked all 4 hands around the wall panel and pulled. The panel came free in a cloud of gray powder. He sneezed, recoiled, and struck the back of his head against a storage shelf. The impact scattered several ancient respirator cases across the floor. Elena peered into the darkness beyond the opening, promising. "You have a strange definition of that word," Verk said. "It exists. That is your standard." Today, Elena glanced toward the distant pulse fire echoing through the residential district. Yes. The tunnel descended beneath the dormitory tower at a steep angle. Old pipes crowded the ceiling. Warning signs had been painted along the walls in languages no longer spoken at the academy. Their symbols faded beneath decades of condensation and mineral stains. According to the surviving maintenance records, the route continued west beyond the current academy walls and ended near the original landing fields. If the passage remained open, it offered Sector 7 an escape route beyond the attacker's perimeter. If it had collapsed, Verk would be placing more than 1,000 people underground with no reliable alternative. Elena unfolded a paper maintenance diagram. Verk looked at it. "You carry physical maps." "Sometimes." "Why?" "Because screens fail." "That answer feels targeted." "It is." Sierra returned from the courtyard entrance. Soot blackened the pale feathers around her face, and her crest had flattened close to her skull. "3 Vora's teams are moving south through the residential quarter," she reported. "They're searching each building." "How long until they reach us?" Verk asked. 12 minutes. "Perhaps less." "What delayed them?" "Boran and Major Varro are holding the western gate." Talon flexed his upper hands. "Boran will be enjoying himself." "Boran is being shot at," Verk said. "Yes, that is usually when he looks happiest." Another burst of pulse fire rattled the building above them. Dust whispered from the ceiling. Verk turned toward the cadets crowding the storeroom. "Begin evacuation. Injured personnel first. Children and smaller species with them. Anyone capable of walking without assistance follows." Cadets moved immediately. Guide lamps were positioned every 20 meters along the tunnel. Emergency ropes were secured to the walls for species that could not navigate safely in darkness. Medical teams transferred the wounded onto compact transport stretchers. The Western Lecture Hall emptied through the loading bay. Academy staff descended into the tunnel in disciplined silence. No one pretended to be a civilian anymore. No one complained about lunch, refused instructions, or demanded to retrieve imaginary luggage. A daring instructor passed Verk carrying a sealed family scent archive. It looked almost identical to the one he had carried during the simulation weeks earlier. For one disorienting moment, Verk wondered whether any of this was real. Then a wounded cadet cried out as a medical team adjusted a brace. The sound answered him. Commander Arun lay on a transport stretcher near the tunnel entrance. His silver skin had faded almost white, and blood had begun soaking through the compression band around his leg. Elena knelt beside him. "You're bleeding through." "I noticed." "That wasn't a request for commentary." "You are a cadet. You are a patient." The commandant looked toward Verk. "Is she always like this?" "Yes, sir." Elena glanced at him, helpful. Something moved at the corner of Arun's mouth. It might have been a smile. "Report," he said. Verk crouched beside the stretcher. "The western utility route appears to continue beyond the academy perimeter. A reconnaissance team is moving ahead. Evacuation has begun." "Defenses." "Rear guard at the courtyard and residence entrances." "Archive." Verk hesitated, abandoned. Commander Arun closed his eyes. Correct. The approval should have relieved him. It did not. What about the rest of the academy? Verk asked. Other sectors received the evacuation order before communications failed. That does not mean they can complete it. No. Arun opened his eyes again. You cannot command the entire academy from this tunnel. Verk knew that. His father had commanded an escort group at Kesh. He had tried to save everyone. He had lost 3 ships. Verk looked down the line of evacuees disappearing beneath the tower. Sector 7, his responsibility, nothing beyond it. The limitation felt both cruel and necessary. Commander Arun saw something in his expression. Command is deciding where your responsibility ends. Verk's throat scales tightened, and living with those outside it. Yes. Elena secured the stretcher straps. You can teach philosophy after surgery. Arun looked at her. Your ranking file described you as difficult. That seems unprofessional. It was written by 6 instructors. Coordinated unprofessionalism. Talon entered the loading bay. Scorch marks crossed one shoulder of his armor, and he carried a bent section of drone plating in one hand. The rear entrance is secured. What happened? Verk asked. A drone objected. And I explained academy policy. He held up the twisted metal. Verk decided not to ask. The first reconnaissance cadet returned through the tunnel. The route is open for approximately 600 meters. After that, the main passage is flooded. Elena spread the maintenance diagram across a storage crate. How deep? Unknown. Current. Slow. Air pocket above the water. Yes. Verk looked toward the evacuees. Several species could not survive full immersion. Others would panic if forced through dark, confined water. We need another route. The cadet pointed at the diagram. There is a vertical maintenance shaft before the flooded section. Where does it lead? An abandoned surface power station. Elena traced the line with one finger. Outside the current academy wall. Verk nodded. Use it. The reconnaissance cadet remained still. The lift is inoperative. Ladders. Removed during decommissioning. Talon flexed all 4 hands. I knew the pastries were not my true purpose. The maintenance shaft rose nearly 18 meters. Its walls were smooth concrete interrupted by rusted guide rails and recessed access panels. Talon climbed first with an emergency line secured around his waist. Every 3 meters, he drove a magnetic anchor into the wall. 2 engineering cadets followed, constructing a pulley system from rescue harnesses, old conduit brackets, and the surviving lift cables. Within minutes, the first stretcher began rising toward the surface. Elena supervised the loading process. Verk remained near the tunnel entrance and counted evacuees as they passed. 481, 482, 483. The attack outside grew louder. Pulse fire struck the dormitory facade. Stone dust drifted through the loading bay. Somewhere above them, glass shattered in a cascading roar. Verk's communicator crackled. Sector 7, report. Major Varro's voice sounded broken and weak beneath the static. Verk seized the device. Evacuation underway through the western utility passage. Numbers. Approximately 500 in the tunnel, 600 remaining. A burst of interference swallowed the channel. When Varro returned, gunfire sounded behind him. The attackers have breached the residential quarter. Where are you? Western Gate. An explosion consumed several words. Then the major's voice returned. Baran is injured. Verk closed his lower eyes. How badly? Mobile angry. That meant alive. Can you reach the tunnel entrance? Negative, route cut off. Alternate position. Maintenance depot. Verk pictured the sector map. The depot connected to the transit station through an underground cargo line, the same transit station that had partially collapsed. Stay there. Cadet. I'll send a team. Major Varro's voice sharpened. You will continue the evacuation. You have 12 cadets with you. A pause, 11. The correction landed heavily. Verk looked toward Elena. She had heard, everyone nearby had. Major Varro continued. You cannot risk the cargo corridor. Verk's mind moved through the situation. 600 civilians still above ground, attackers entering the district, a collapsing transit station, a trapped instructor team, bore unwounded. One cadet dead. This was the choice. The academy had been building toward it since Verk's first morning beneath the wall of distinction. Mission, people, control. He could send cadets after Major Varro and risk the evacuation. He could abandon the Major and protect his sector. Neither answer felt right. That no longer surprised him. Elena. She left the pulley station and came to him. Situation. He explained. She studied the old diagram. The cargo line enters beneath the depot. The station collapse blocks it. Probably is not useful. It is when the alternative is definitely blocked. Verk looked toward the evacuation line. Can you reach them? Elena followed his gaze. She understood what he was really asking. Could she go without taking everyone else with her? Could he send her away while keeping command of the evacuation? Could they rescue the trapped cadets without abandoning the hundreds already moving through the tunnel? I need 4 cadets, she said. No more. Talon. He is operating the shaft. He can finish the anchors. Sierra. We need her drones. Verk considered the cadets still available. Sierra leads you, 2 combat specialists, 1 engineer. Elena shook her head. You said 4. Including you. I meant 4 plus me. No. For once, she did not argue immediately. The tunnel trembled, dust fell from the pipes. Verk held her gaze. You are not changing the mission. No. You retrieve Major Varro's group if the route remains passable. Yes. If it is not, you return. Elena said nothing. Mercer. I heard you. That is not an answer. Her expression changed. Not resistance. Respect, perhaps. I return if the route cannot be opened without compromising the evacuation. Good. And if it can, you bring them home. Elena nodded. Verk understood then what Commander Aaron had meant after the simulation. Elena had acted. Verk had followed. This time he had made the decision. He owned the risk. The distinction did not make it easier. It made it his. Elena entered the transit station through a maintenance door beneath the northern courtyard. Sierra moved ahead with 2 surviving reconnaissance drones. Cadets Jalen Orr and Myra Hesh followed with pulse rifles. Engineer Cadet Pavo carried cutting equipment and complained quietly about its weight. The station lights were dead. Smoke hung beneath the ceiling. Part of the eastern platform had collapsed into the track channel, and water from broken pipes streamed down the walls. Elena crouched beside a crack in the platform. Air movement. Pavo leaned over her shoulder. From where? Below us. The plans place the cargo tunnel beneath this platform. Then we go down. They crossed the station. A burst of enemy fire struck the far wall. Jalen caught Elena's shoulder and pulled her behind a support pillar. 3 armored figures entered through the station doors. Vora's remnant. Their armor was matte gray. Their helmets carried no markings. They advanced with controlled spacing, each covering the other's blind angles, not fanatics, soldiers. Sierra's crest flattened. They followed us. No, Elena said. One attacker stopped near the station control room. They're moving toward the depot. Major Varro's team had not become trapped by chance. The attackers had driven them there. Myra raised her rifle. Engage. Elena studied the station. The Voras had cover. Higher ground, a clear path of retreat. A direct firefight would cost time and people. She pointed towards Sierra's drones. Can those carry charges? Small ones. Enough to break the lights. Sierra's crest shifted orange. Yes. The drones rose into the darkness. Elena led the others down into the track channel. The first drone reached the ceiling. A flash split the station. Half the remaining lights exploded. The second drone crossed behind the attackers and struck an emergency fire control panel. Ohm cannons activated. Thick white suppressant flooded the platform. The Voras opened fire blindly. Elena's team moved beneath them. Jalen fired once. One attacker fell. Myra struck another through the leg. The third swept his rifle toward the track channel. Elena ran directly at him. He fired. She dropped beneath the burst, slid across the wet platform, and struck the outside of his knee with both boots. Armor buckled. The attacker fell sideways. Elena seized the rifle barrel before he could recover. He was larger than she was, stronger. He pulled. Elena went with the motion instead of resisting it. She drove the heel of one hand beneath his helmet seal. His head snapped back. She twisted the rifle, stepped inside his reach, and used the weapon's sling as a lever around his arm. The joint locked. The attacker released the weapon. Elena struck him once with the rifle stock. He collapsed into the fire suppressant. Pavo stared at her. Maritime response. Elena checked the captured rifle. Pirates have boats. They found the cargo passage beneath the collapsed platform. A concrete support beam had fallen across the entrance. Pavo examined it. I can cut through. How long? 8 minutes. Gunfire echoed from the depot beyond. We have 4. Pavo opened the cutting torch. Then I will do 8 minutes of work poorly. Elena helped position temporary supports around the beam. The concrete glowed beneath the cutter. Sierra sent one drone through the narrow opening. Its feed appeared on Elena's wrist display. Major Varro and his remaining cadets had barricaded themselves inside the depot maintenance office. Boran sat against the wall with one leg bloodied, firing a heavy cannon through the doorway. 3 bodies lay near the cargo line. One wore academy armor, the dead cadet. 5 Vora's soldiers moved through the depot, more waited beyond the main entrance. Major Varro had perhaps 2 minutes. Elena keyed her communicator. Major, cargo passage. Static, then Varro answered. Blocked. We're opening it. You were ordered to evacuate. I was ordered to retrieve you. A pulse struck the depot office wall. The drone feed shook. Then move faster, Varro said. Pavo completed the cut. The damaged section of beam shifted but did not fall. Elena and Myra braced their shoulders against it. Sierra joined them. Together they forced the gap wide enough for one person to crawl through. Major Varro pushed the first wounded cadet toward the opening. Go. The academy cadets crossed one at a time. Enemy pulses struck the beam. Concrete fragments sprayed through the passage. Boran remained on the far side. Elena reached through the gap. Your turn. He pushed a wounded instructor toward her. Last. You are injured. I am still large. The statement apparently settled the matter for him. Major Varro reached the opening. 2 attackers entered the cargo line behind him. He fired until his weapon clicked empty. Boran rose despite his ruined leg and charged. The first attacker disappeared beneath him. The second struck Boran in the chest with a pulse burst. His armor flashed. He fell against the beam. Elena crawled through the gap. Major Varro caught her shoulder. Absolutely not. She pulled free. Help Boran. The second attacker raised his weapon. Elena fired the captured rifle from the floor. The pulse struck his chest plate but failed to penetrate. She fired again. His armor absorbed it. The rifle's charge display went dark. Elena threw the weapon. The attacker knocked it aside and reached for her. Elena drove Pavo's cutting torch into the damaged seam of his knee armor and triggered it. White heat erupted. The attacker screamed and stumbled. Elena rose inside his reach. One strike to the throat seal, another to the side of the helmet. Then she hooked one foot behind the burned knee and drove him backward over Boran's fallen cannon. The attacker hit the floor. Elena seized the heavy weapon. It had been designed for a Brin. The grip was too wide for her hands, and the barrel dragged toward the ground. The attacker attempted to rise. Elena braced the cannon against her hip. Stay down. He looked at the human, then at the weapon. He stayed down. Boran opened one eye. That is mine. You left it. I was using it. You were unconscious. Briefly. Major Varro dragged Boran toward the passage. The remaining attackers regrouped at the far end of the depot. Elena fired the cannon. The recoil nearly lifted her from the floor. The pulse struck the wall above the enemy and brought half the ceiling down between them. Boran watched the collapse. You aimed high. I missed. A low rumble came from his chest. Elena's translator identified it as laughter. They crawled through the opening. Pavo released the temporary supports. The beam dropped behind them. The cargo passage sealed. Verk received Elena's transmission 23 minutes after she left. Package recovered. He closed all 4 eyes for one breath. Casualties. A brief delay followed. 1 academy fatality, 4 wounded. Boran complains constantly. Boran's voice came faintly through the channel. I can hear you. Verk tightened his grip on the communicator. Return immediately. We are moving. Behind him, the evacuation line continued. 814 people had entered the tunnel. 590 had reached the surface shaft. 224 remained below. Nearly 300 civilians still waited inside Sector 7. The attackers had entered Dormitory Tower 4. Cadet defenders withdrew courtyard by courtyard. Talon returned from the shaft drenched in sweat. The pulley is holding. How quickly can it move? Not quickly enough. A pulse struck the loading bay door. The hinges bent inward. The rear guard fired through narrow openings cut into the barricade. Verk looked toward the remaining evacuees. At the current pace, the attackers would reach them first. His mind offered no clever solution. No hidden route, no forgotten vehicle, only time. They needed more of it. Commander Aaron had been raised halfway up the shaft when he ordered the stretcher stopped. He looked down toward Verk. Seal the tunnel behind the final group. We still have 300 above. Then reduce the line. How? The commandant's gaze shifted toward the old pipes. Verk followed it. A faded symbol marked one of the largest conduits. Thermal exchange reservoir. Dormitory heating water. Thousands of liters stored under pressure. Verk understood. Releasing the reservoir would flood the lower tunnel with near-boiling water. It would stop pursuit. It would also destroy their escape route. They could activate it only after the final evacuees had entered. The attackers would arrive sooner. We need to hold the loading bay, Verk said. Commander Aaron nodded. Yes. For how long? Until everyone is through. That may be 20 minutes. Yes. Verk looked toward the cadets defending the doors. Most were first years. Some had never fired a real weapon before today. His father had delayed withdrawal at Kesh. 3 escort ships. 12 transports. Numbers were easy when carved into reports. Harder when they had names. Talon, Sierra, Elena, Boran. Verk faced the loading bay. I need volunteers. Every cadet within hearing turned toward him. No hesitation. That frightened him. They trusted him. The academy had taught him to desire that trust. It had never taught him how heavy it would feel. Talon stepped beside him. You already have one. Sierra returned through the northern passage, her feathers blackened with smoke. 2. Major Varro's group appeared behind her. Boran limped between 2 cadets. Elena followed last, carrying the Brin cannon over one shoulder. Talon's mandibles opened. You found a larger weapon. It followed me home. Boran pointed at it. It remains mine. Verk crossed the loading bay and stopped before Elena. You returned. You ordered me to. A simple answer. It mattered more than she knew. Major Varro surveyed the damaged doors and the evacuation line. Status. Verk explained. The major checked the western entrance. We hold here. No, Verk said. Major Varro looked at him. You are injured. Minors. You have combat experience. Yes. And I am sector commander. Major Varro's expression tightened. Verk expected resistance. Instead, the instructor straightened. Orders. The word settled every doubt. Verk divided the defenders. Major Varro took command of the western door. Sierra used her final reconnaissance drone to watch the courtyard. Talon and Boran held the central loading bay. Elena took the northern passage with 6 cadets. Verk remained at the junction where he could monitor all 3 approaches. The first attack came through the western entrance. Pulse charges blew the door inward. Major Varro's team fired from behind overturned cargo containers. 2 attackers fell. 3 entered. Talon seized a metal bench and hurled it through the doorway. It struck one attacker and blocked the opening. The northern passage erupted next. Elena fired Boran's cannon from a braced position. The recoil drove her backward across the floor. She corrected, fired again. The attackers withdrew. Boran called from the central bay. You are overheating the regulator. I don't know what that means. It means stop. They're still moving. Then fire slower. That sounds like surrender. Boran rumbled angrily and tried to drag himself toward her. Talon blocked him. You have been shot. She is abusing my weapon. You may file a complaint. The evacuation count climbed. 200 remaining, 150. The attackers changed tactics. Smoke canisters rolled through the western entrance. The academy defenders lost sight of the courtyard. Sierra's drone feed flashed. Movement above. Verk looked up. The Voras had entered the upper floor of the lecture hall. They were cutting through the loading bay ceiling. Clear the center. The ceiling exploded. 3 armored figures dropped into the bay. One landed behind the medical station. Elena turned the cannon, too slow. The attacker raised his rifle toward the stretcher line. Verk fired. His first pulse struck the attacker's shoulder. The soldier spun but remained standing. Verk fired again, missed. The enemy weapon aligned with him. Elena crossed the distance between them. She knocked the rifle barrel aside as it discharged. The pulse burned across her upper arm. She did not stop. Her forehead struck the attacker's helmet hard enough for Verk to hear the impact through the gunfire. She caught the weapon's sling, turned beneath it, dragged him forward. Verk understood. He stepped in and drove his rifle stock into the attacker's exposed side. Talon seized the armored figure with two hands and threw him into the others. All three collapsed together. Boron fired one controlled pulse over their heads. This time, Elena listened. The attackers surrendered. Another Vora's wave entered through the western door. Major Varro's line bent. One Academy cadet fell. Sierra dragged him behind cover. Verk saw blood. Real. The number of defenders dropped again. The evacuation coordinator shouted from the tunnel. Final civilian group entering. Not finished. Entering, they still had to reach the shaft. Elena pressed one hand against the burn on her arm. Thermal reservoir. Not yet. How long? 8 minutes. The loading bay shook beneath another impact. Talon looked toward the failing doors. We do not have 8 minutes. Verk searched the room. 3 transport vehicles had been assigned to Sector 7. 2 had been disabled. The third remained where Elena had positioned it that morning, unassigned. Available when the plan broke, he pointed. Elena. She followed his gaze. The transport was an armored emergency carrier, heavy, empty. Its forward cabin faced the courtyard. The loading bay doors were too narrow for it. Elena smiled. That sounds like an engineering opinion. Pavo looked horrified. It will not fit. Can it move? Elena asked. Yes. Good. She climbed into the driver's seat. Talon joined her. What are we doing? Making a door. The carrier's engine roared to life. Verk ordered the defenders clear. Elena reversed across the loading bay. The rear of the vehicle struck the loading dock wall. Stone cracked. She drove forward, then reversed again. The wall collapsed outward. The armored carrier burst into the courtyard through falling masonry. Vora's soldiers scattered. Elena turned hard and parked the vehicle sideways across the new opening, creating a barricade nearly 3 meters thick. Talon emerged from the passenger side carrying 2 rifles. That was excellent. Pavo stared at the destroyed wall. That building is historically protected. Talon handed him a weapon. Protect it. The carrier bought them 6 minutes. The defenders gave it 2 more. Then the final signal came through the tunnel communicator. All civilians clear of the lower passage. Verk reached the thermal reservoir controls. Old valves lined the pipe wall. None were labeled in a language he could read. Elena joined him, breathing hard. Blood ran down one arm. Which one? Verk examined the maintenance diagram. I do not know. You have 4 eyes. That does not make me an engineer. Pavo crawled beneath the pipe assembly. This valve opens the lower reservoir. Are you certain? No. Elena looked at Verk. He remembered their first week, because I could. That answer had not been enough for him then. Now the decision belonged to him, so did the consequences. Verk placed both hands on the wheel. Open it. They turned together. The valve resisted. Talon added 2 hands. Boron, still seated against the wall, contributed 1. The metal wheel shrieked. Then it moved. A deep roar filled the tunnel. Pressurized water surged through the lower passages. Steam rolled back toward the loading bay. The old utility route collapsed behind the evacuation line. The attackers' pursuit ended beneath thousands of liters of heat, water, and debris. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Talon looked toward the command kit. The pastry bag lay empty beside it. Someone ate the emergency supplies. Verk stared at him. Talon searched the room suspiciously. This academy has criminals everywhere. Elena sat against the wall. The adrenaline left her all at once. Her injured arm began to shake. Verk crouched beside her. You were hit. Glancing. That is not a medical classification. It is on Earth. Commander Aron's voice came through the shaft communicator. Sector 7. Verk lifted the device. Evacuated. How many? Verk checked the final count. 1,093 civilians and academy staff. A pause followed. Casualties. Verk looked across the ruined loading bay, at the covered body of the cadet lost in the depot. at 2 defenders receiving emergency treatment, at the dozens of wounded waiting to enter the tunnel. "1 fatality confirmed," he said. "No civilians left behind." Commander Arun remained silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Bring your people home." Verk looked around the loading bay. Major Varro directed the wounded toward the tunnel. Sierra helped Pavo gather the remaining equipment. Boran argued with Elena about the permanent damage she had caused to his cannon. Talon searched everyone's pockets for the missing pastries, his people. The words no longer felt like rank. They felt like obligation. Verk stood. "Sector 7, move." Elena tried to rise. Her injured arm failed beneath her. Talon offered 2 hands. She accepted one. Boran extended another without looking at her. Together they pulled her upright. The last defenders entered the tunnel. Verk remained at the entrance until everyone else had passed. That was not doctrine. No academy regulation required the commanding officer to leave last. He did it because someone should. Before stepping into the darkness, he looked back at the ruined residential district. Smoke drifted between the towers. Through a broken window in the distant dining hall, the academy ranking display still glowed. Verk could just make out the final entry. Elena Mercer, 300th, last in the academy. Verk turned away. The ranking suddenly seemed very small. Chapter 6. The academy learned what command was for. The utility shaft opened into the ruins of an old power station beyond the academy's western wall. Rain fell through the broken roof in cold sheets, striking rusted machinery and shattered concrete with 1,000 metallic taps. One by one, the survivors of Sector 7 climbed through the maintenance hatch and crossed the cracked floor toward open ground. Medical cadets established treatment stations beneath collapsed turbine housings. Engineering teams rigged lamps to emergency batteries and stretched bright cables through the gloom. Instructors counted civilians while the wounded lay on insulation blankets, waiting for treatment or news of missing classmates. Nobody asked whether the exercise was still being graded. Verk emerged last. His uniform was soaked with sweat, rain, and water from the tunnel. Dust coated his face. One side of his throat scales had been scorched dark by the heat in the loading bay. A medical cadet approached him the moment his boots touched the floor. Verk stepped aside. "Others first." The medic caught his sleeve. "You are bleeding." Verk looked down. A shard of stone had cut through his uniform near his ribs. A dark stain spread beneath the torn fabric. He had not noticed. "I am mobile." That was not the question. Elena sat nearby while another medic wrapped her burned arm. She looked over. They learned quickly. Verk allowed the medic to seal the wound. Beneath the shell of an old turbine, Talon lay flat on his back with all 4 arms spread around him. A pastry rested on his chest. Verk stared. "Where did you get that?" Talon opened one eye. "Emergency reserve." "You said the supplies were gone." "I said someone ate them." "You ate them?" "I was under tremendous stress." Boran sat beside him with his injured leg immobilized in a rigid field brace. "You ate mine." Talon broke the pastry in half. Boran accepted his portion without further complaint. Sierra stood near the power station's open western wall. Her crest had settled into a tired gray as she watched the academy through the rain. From outside the perimeter, the scale of the attack was finally visible. Smoke rose from the central command building in a black column. One dormitory tower burned near the eastern ridge, its windows glowing orange through the downpour. Academy defense aircraft circled high overhead, unable to fire while attackers and cadets occupied the same buildings. Dropships from the planetary security fleet waited beyond the campus. Each attempt to approach was answered by the Academy's automated batteries. The Voras had taken control of the defense grid. The Galactic Officer Academy had been designed to withstand an invasion. Now its defenses protected the invaders. Major Varro approached Verk. One side of the Major's uniform had been cut away, revealing a sealed wound beneath his shoulder. "You maintained a count. 1,093 evacuated." "Confirmed." "Confirmed." "Missing." 7 Academy personnel assigned to the transit station before the collapse. Major Varro's jaw tightened. "Likely trapped." "Yes. Likely dead." Verk looked back toward the academy. "I do not know." The old answer would have been unacceptable. Today, it was honest. Commander Arun had been moved beneath a metal overhang. A field surgeon worked on his injured leg while an academy technician fought with an emergency transmitter. The device produced only static. Verk approached. Any contact? Fragments, the technician said. The Voras are jamming Academy channels, but damaged relays are opening brief windows. She adjusted the transmitter. A voice emerged through the static. Sector 3 shelter compromised, moving wounded to. The signal vanished. Another replaced it. Fire spreading through the engineering wing. We need. Static swallowed the rest. The technician changed frequencies. Only 3 sectors have reported successful evacuations, she said. A 4th may still be moving. We cannot confirm. Verk looked toward the Academy. 12 sectors. Sector 7 had escaped. Perhaps 3 others. Thousands remained inside. Commander Arun's face had gone pale beneath the geometric markings on his skin. The fleet cannot land while the defense grid remains operational. Where is the grid controlled? Verk asked. Primary access is beneath Central Command. The technician shook her head. Not anymore. The network has shifted to emergency authority. Master control is running through the archive core. Arun's gaze moved toward the smoke rising from the oldest part of the Academy. The Voras planned this. Major Varro joined them. They attacked during the exercise because security teams were dispersed. They knew where the archive access points were, Arun said. They knew the emergency command structure. They knew how the defense network would respond. A tone cut through the static. Every functioning speaker in the power station activated at once. A voice followed, calm, measured, amplified across the Academy grounds. This is Commander Rethvaz of the Vora's Restoration Front. The survivors fell silent. We control the Central Archive and the Academy Defense Network. We possess fleet deployment records, treaty routes, emergency access codes, and the identities of Council intelligence personnel. Commander Arun closed his eyes. The broadcast continued. Planetary forces will not enter Academy airspace. Any attempt to breach the perimeter will result in the destruction of occupied shelters. Talon sat up beneath the turbine. His pastry lay forgotten. All Academy personnel will surrender their weapons and assemble in the central courtyards. Resistance will result in civilian casualties. The broadcast ended. Rain struck the broken roof. No one spoke for several seconds. Major Varro looked at Commander Arun. They will not leave witnesses. No, Arun said. Verk looked toward the civilians sheltering inside the power station. Nearly 1,100 people depended upon the handful of officers and cadets standing beneath the ruined roof. They had limited medicine, no secure perimeter, no reliable communications, and no way to stop the Voras from turning the Academy's defenses on the remaining sectors. Elena rose from the medical station. The medic reached for her. She stepped away before he could stop her. Show me the defense network. The technician projected a schematic across an old control table. 3 fusion generators powered the Academy. A branching cooling network ran between them, feeding both the main campus and the defensive batteries. The lines spread beneath the Academy like glowing veins. One branch passed through Sector 7. Verk recognized it. We damaged that line when we opened the thermal reservoir. Yes, the technician said. The system is compensating through the remaining branches. Would losing more coolant disable the grid? Eventually, automated shutdown would begin within 20 minutes. Elena shook her head. Eventually is too slow. The technician studied the projection. Unless the system believes the reactors are overheating. Pavo limped closer. His cutting equipment still hung from one shoulder, blackened from the depot rescue. You want to falsify the sensor readings. Elena looked at him. Can we? Pavo enlarged the cooling network. From a local pumping station, perhaps. The nearest one. He pointed toward a low structure just inside the western wall. Building K-17. Sierra looked through the rain. That is inside the perimeter. The building stood less than 400 meters away. Between it and the power station lay open ground watched by 4 Academy security turrets. The turrets currently belong to the Voras. Major Varro studied the route. They will fire on anything that crosses. Elena pointed toward the evacuation transports parked in the power station yard. These Academy vehicles have friendly identifiers. The attackers control the network, the technician said. They may have canceled them. May have. They did not fire on your transport in Sector 7 until you breached the loading bay wall. Then the identifier worked. For a time, Elena looked at Verk. He knew that expression now. She had found an exit. It simply happened to run toward the danger. "No," Verk said. "I haven't proposed anything. You are about to. I was going to suggest that a small team reach K-17, overload the cooling sensors, shut down the defense grid, and allow planetary security to land. That is not a small suggestion. It is a small team." Major Varro examined the route. "She is correct." Verk turned toward him. "You told me to continue the evacuation rather than retrieve you. That decision protected Sector 7. And this could protect the Academy." Commander Arun spoke from beneath the overhang. "It could also kill the only organized rescue group outside the walls." Rain drummed against the metal roof. No one answered. Verk looked around the power station. Medics moved among the wounded. Children huddled against instructors beneath thermal blankets. Cadets stood guard at openings that offered no real protection. If the rescue team failed, Sector 7 would lose its remaining command staff. The Academy would remain trapped. If they did nothing, the other sectors would fall one by one. Responsibility had boundaries. Sometimes command required moving them. Verk looked toward the old controls. "Can we disable the turrets from here?" The technician shook her head. "Not through the network." "What about physically?" Sierra's crest lifted. "My remaining drone could carry an electromagnetic charge." "One turret," Major Varro said. "There are 4. Talon stood. "Then we require a distraction." Boron tried to rise. His damaged leg folded beneath him, and he caught the turbine housing before he fell. "No," Elena said. Boron stared at her. "I did not ask." "You cannot walk." "I can stand." "Poorly." Talon placed 2 hands on Boron's shoulders and pushed him gently back onto the floor. "I will distract them." Verk looked at him. "How?" Talon glanced toward the line of Academy cargo vehicles. His mandibles spread. "No," Verk said. "You do not even know what I am thinking." "I know enough." The first vehicle crossed the Academy boundary at full speed. It was an empty cargo hauler. Talon had locked the steering control and wedged a metal equipment case over the accelerator. The hauler charged through the rain with its lights flashing and emergency sirens screaming. The nearest turret rotated, fired. The vehicle disappeared in a burst of white heat. A second hauler followed 50 meters to the north. Another turret engaged. Sierra's drone rose from behind a ruined wall and accelerated toward it. The electromagnetic charge detonated against the turret housing. The weapon fell silent. Elena drove the third vehicle. Verk sat beside her. Major Varro, Sierra, Pavo, and 2 combat cadets filled the rear compartment. Talon had objected to being left behind. Then Verk assigned him command of the power station perimeter. He stopped objecting, mostly. "You could drive more slowly," Verk said as the transport crossed the open ground. "I could." A pulse struck the pavement behind them. Elena turned sharply. The vehicle slid sideways across wet stone. "That was not a request for possibilities." "You should be specific." Another turret rotated toward them. A targeting light swept across the windshield. The transport's Academy identifier flashed green. For 1 second, the turret did nothing. Then the indicator turned red. "Hold on," Elena said. She drove directly toward the wall beneath the weapon. Verk gripped the dashboard. "What are you doing?" "Getting inside its firing angle." The turret fired. The pulse crossed above the transport and struck the ground where they had been. Elena drove beneath the platform, close enough that the barrel could no longer depress far enough to target them. They followed the wall until K-17 appeared through the rain. The pumping station door was sealed. Elena did not slow. Pavo leaned forward from the rear compartment. "That door is reinforced." "Good." "For stopping vehicles." "Less good." The transport struck it. Metal folded inward. Airbags erupted across the cabin. Verk's head snapped forward and stopped against something soft. For several seconds, his world became white fabric and warning tones. Elena shoved the deflating bag aside. "Everyone alive." Major Varro called from the rear. "Uninjured." Pavo climbed over a seat. "This academy has doors." "We used it." "That was not what I meant." They entered the pumping station. Old turbines filled the lower chamber. New sensor panels had been installed across machinery older than the current Galactic Council. The air smelled of coolant, machine oil, and damp metal. Pavo opened the primary control housing. This system is connected to all 3 generators. How long, Verk asked, to understand it? To break it. Pavo looked offended, much less. The 2 combat cadets secured the shattered entrance. Sierra climbed to the upper gallery and watched the academy grounds through narrow windows. Elena examined the pipes. We need the system to report catastrophic heat. Pavo connected his datapad to the local controls. I can alter the sensor thresholds, but the central network will detect the inconsistency. Then create real heat. Verk looked at her. How? She pointed toward 2 cooling manifolds. Close the return valves. Pavo's expression changed. That could rupture the lines. Will it? Yes. How long? Several minutes. Good. They began turning valves. Some moved easily. Others had not been touched in decades. Major Varro used a length of metal as a lever. Elena climbed onto a pipe housing and kicked one wheel until corrosion cracked from the joint. Verk helped Pavo alter the sensor thresholds. Warnings appeared across the control panel. Coolant pressure rising. Temperature imbalance detected. Central diagnostic requested. Pavo grinned. It noticed. Is that good? Verk asked. It depends on how much it trusts us. Gunfire struck the outer door. The combat cadets returned fire. Sierra called from above. 2 Vora's teams approaching, more behind them. Major Varro drew his sidearm. Continue. The first coolant line ruptured. Steam filled the lower chamber in a violent white cloud. Temperature alarms screamed. Pavo entered the final command. The panel turned red. Generator 1, emergency shutdown. A second warning followed. Generator 2, emergency shutdown. The station lights flickered. Outside, the Academy defense turrets stopped moving one by one. Pavo watched the third status display. It is not shutting down. Why? Elena asked. Independent sensor loop. Where? He checked the schematic. Central archive. Of course, 1 generator remained active, enough to operate part of the defense network, enough to prevent planetary security from approaching the central campus. Sierra looked through the upper windows. Some turrets are offline. The eastern batteries remain active. Major Varro fired through the entrance. We achieved a partial shutdown. Partial doesn't land the rescue fleet, Elena said. The outer door collapsed inward. 2 Vora's soldiers entered. The combat cadets engaged them. One fell, the second threw a compact charge toward the control panel. Verk saw it with his lower left eye. Elena saw it too. She shoved Pavo aside. The charge detonated. The panel erupted in sparks and fragments. The blast threw Verk to the floor. When he looked up, Elena lay against the wall. Smoke rolled from the front of her uniform. For one terrible moment, she did not move. Then she coughed. That, she said weakly, was rude. Verk reached her. A fragment had cut across her side. Blood spread beneath the hand pressed against the wound. Major Varro drove the remaining attacker back through the ruined entrance. Sierra descended from the gallery. We cannot hold this station. Pavo stared at the destroyed panel. The shutdown commands are locked. I cannot reach Generator 3 from here. Verk pressed a field dressing against Elena's wound. She inhaled sharply. Central archive. No. It has the final control. You are injured. So are you. You have been shot, burned, and thrown against a wall today. Busy schedule. Major Varro returned. We withdraw to the power station. Verk looked toward the Academy Center. The remaining defense batteries continued firing into the sky. Planetary security ships circled beyond their range while broken transmissions from trapped sectors hissed through the emergency channels. They had weakened the system. Not enough, Elena tried to stand. Verk held her down. You are not going to the archive. Someone has to. Not you. Then you. The answer stopped him. Elena looked toward Major Varro. At least one route into Central Command should remain beneath the archive. The Major understood. The simulation utility conduit. Verk remembered the city that did not exist. The burning residential tower, the passage beneath the boulevard, an old maintenance route the enemy had not expected. The Academy had built its simulations from real places and real conflicts. Its archive had been designed according to the same philosophy. Every fortress needed an exit. Elena closed her eyes briefly. You notice enough of them, eventually one goes the right direction. Verk turned to Sierra. Can you guide us? One drone remains near the station entrance. Pavo, I can disable Generator 3 if I reach its local control. Major Varro checked the ammunition remaining in his sidearm. Then we move. Verk looked down at Elena. You return to the power station. No, that is an order. She opened her eyes. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Elena looked ready to argue and too exhausted to do it. Verk continued. You taught me that following an order does not remove responsibility. Yes. This is mine. Elena studied him, then she nodded. Bring them home. Verk had heard those words once already. Now he understood why commanders used them. They were not encouragement, they were a promise. The maintenance conduit entered the academy beneath the Hall of Distinction. Verk, Major Varro, Sierra, Pavo, and the 2 combat cadets crawled through darkness while the structure trembled around them. The narrow passage smelled of dust, old insulation, and hot metal. It ended behind a service panel. Voices sounded on the other side. Vora's troops. Pavo attached a sensor to the wall. 4 nearby. Major Varro pointed silently. Sierra guided her drone through a ventilation opening. Its feed showed the archive hall. The wall of distinction stretched through smoke and pulsing emergency light. Vora's extraction equipment surrounded the central data core. Cables and transfer units had been fastened across the polished floor. Dozens of academy staff and cadets knelt beneath guard near the far wall. The Vora's commander stood at the core, tall, gray armor marked with a red stripe. His helmet rested on the console beside him. Verk recognized the voice from the surrender broadcast. The final generator control is on the lower platform, Pavo whispered. Can you reach it? If someone clears the guards. Major Varro studied the drone feed. We strike quickly. Pavo goes low. Sierra covers the hostages. Verk watched the wall of distinction. Names carved into black stone. Perfect tactical scores. Perfect strategic scores. Officers remembered for winning battles. His father's name was not there. Neither was Elena's. Verk realized he had spent years wanting the wall to tell him what an officer should be. It never had. The wall only recorded whom the academy had chosen to remember. That could change. Verk opened the service panel. The nearest Vora's guard turned. Verk fired. Major Varro entered behind him. Sierra's drone dove toward the overhead lights and destroyed them. The hall fell into darkness. Verk's 4 eyes adjusted faster than the attacker's optics. For the first time in his life, the trait his mother called rude and his father called efficient became something else. Useful. He saw 4 angles at once. A guard moving left. A hostage falling. Pavo crawling beneath the lower platform. Major Varro reloading, the Vora's commander reaching for the archive controls. Verk shot the guard on the left, turned, fired at the console. The commander ducked. Major Varro engaged 2 soldiers near the hostages. Sierra climbed the wall supports and dropped behind another guard, striking the seam of his helmet with the butt of her rifle. Pavo reached the generator panel. 30 seconds. The Vora's commander pulled a compact weapon from his belt and fired at him. Verk stepped between them. The pulse struck his armor. Heat punched through his chest. He fell to one knee. The commander advanced. You are a student. Verk struggled to breathe. Yes. This academy sent children to fight. No. Verk looked toward the hostages, toward Major Varro, toward Sierra, toward Pavo working beneath the console. It taught officers to protect people. The commander fired again. Verk rolled behind the base of the wall of distinction. The pulse struck the black stone. A carved name vanished in a burst of shattered rock. The commander followed him. Verk checked his rifle. No ammunition. He removed the depleted power cell and threw the weapon aside. The Vora's commander smiled. Then part of the ceiling dropped onto him, not the entire ceiling. One maintenance panel, heavy enough to knock him forward. Talon landed behind it. All 4 arms carried weapons. Verk stared. You were ordered to command the power station. I delegated. To whom? Borant. He cannot walk. He commands very loudly. Elena appeared in the maintenance opening behind him, one arm around the technician from the power station. A fresh field dressing covered her side. Anger and relief struck Verk at the same time. I ordered you back. I went back. You are here. I came again. That is not obedience. No. The Vora's commander shoved the fallen panel aside and rose. Talon fired all 4 weapons. 2 jammed, 1 missed. The 4th struck the commander's armor and drove him against the wall. Elena crossed the hall before he recovered. He swung at her. She ducked. His gauntlet struck the wall of distinction hard enough to crack the stone. Elena caught his arm with both hands, turned beneath it, and drove him face first into the engraved names. He tried to rise. She struck the damaged joint in his armor. Once, twice. The plate failed. Talon seized him from behind with all 4 arms. The commander struggled. Talon lifted him from the floor. I was told humans were the frightening species. Elena picked up the commander's weapon. They exaggerate. Talon tightened his grip. So do we. Pavo shouted from beneath the platform, "Shut down." The archive lights went dark. Outside, the final defense batteries ceased firing. For 2 seconds, the entire academy became silent. Then the sky roared. Planetary security dropships crossed the walls. Rescue craft descended into the courtyards. Medical transports landed beside the dormitory towers. Academy defense pilots reclaimed the air. The Vora soldiers still inside the campus found themselves surrounded by the combined forces of 60 civilizations. Most surrendered. Those who did not lasted less than 12 minutes. Verk sat against the wall of distinction. His burned armor smoked faintly. Elena lowered herself beside him. Talon placed the captured Vora's commander on the floor and sat on him. Major Varro released the hostages. Sierra helped Pavo climb from beneath the generator console. Through the shattered ceiling, searchlights crossed the rain. The first rescue teams entered the hall. Verk looked at Elena. You disobeyed a direct order. Yes. You returned to an active combat zone while seriously wounded. Yes. You brought an injured technician with you. She knew the archive service route. The technician raised one hand. I objected repeatedly. Elena nodded. She did. Verk tried to remain angry. He failed. Why did you come back? Elena looked around the hall. At the hostages, at the rescued cadets, at the names carved into the wall, because you were alone. Verk laughed. It hurt. He laughed anyway. Here is the revised epilogue, preserving the memorial, academy reforms, ranking change, Verk's reconciliation with his father, and the final definition of victory. Epilogue. The Mercer Standard. The final rescue count took 11 days. 10,872 cadets, instructors, staff members, and civilian workers survived the Vora's attack. 31 did not. Their names were read aloud in the grand orientation chamber. No orchestra played. The banners of 60 civilizations hung motionless beneath the vaulted ceiling. Representatives from each stood together while the families of the dead received academy insignias that should have accompanied graduations years later. Some accepted them in silence. Some wept. One elderly Bryn held the small insignia between both front hands and stared at it long after the ceremony ended. The academy did not hide the failures that had allowed the Vora's remnant inside. Security officers had been compromised. Exercise schedules had been stolen. Emergency systems had depended too heavily upon centralized control. The defense network had been designed to resist an invasion, but not to recognize when the invaders were already inside. The official inquiry filled 23 volumes. Talon claimed no intelligent being would read all of them. Verk did. Elena read the summary. Boran refused to read any document that described driving an armored transport through a protected historical wall as an unexpected structural modification. The academy remained closed for 2 months. Planetary engineers rebuilt the transit station. Dormitory Tower 3 received an entirely new ventilation system. The western utility tunnels were drained, reinforced, and added to every evacuation map. The loading bay wall in Sector 7 was also rebuilt. A small plaque beside it read, "Emergency exit." Elena claimed not to know who had arranged that. No one believed her. When classes resumed, the wall of distinction remained damaged. The Vora's commander's gauntlet had cracked several engravings. Pulse fire had erased parts of others. Black stone around the archive access point remained scarred by heat, impact marks, and fractured names. The Academy administration proposed replacing the entire section. Commander Arun refused. The damage remained, not as decoration, as evidence. On the first morning of the new term, Verk returned before dawn. The old hall smelled of stone, cleaning solvent, and fresh paint. Maintenance drones moved across the polished floor, their brushes clicking softly beneath the hum of the environmental systems. For the first time since the attack, the academy sounded normal. The illusion lasted until Verk looked at the wall. Fresh repairs met broken stone in uneven lines. Some names remained perfect. Others had been partially destroyed. The damage gave the monument an unfinished appearance, as though history itself had been interrupted halfway through a sentence. Footsteps echoed behind him. Talon entered carrying breakfast. His upper left arm remained secured in a brace, but that had not prevented him from balancing 4 cups, 2 trays, and a paper bag between his remaining hands. "You know," Talon said, "one day you are going to smile at that wall." Verk looked at him. "You are still saying that?" "I survived an invasion. I intend to preserve important traditions." He handed Verk a cup. "What is this?" "Tea." "It smells terrible." "So does your nutritional paste." Some things did not require improvement. Sierra entered behind him. New crest feathers had begun growing where the fire had damaged the old ones. They were shorter than the rest and bright violet against the mature red of her crest. Boron followed on a support frame. He moved too quickly for it, which caused the machine to issue a warning tone every few steps. "The medical service weakened this device," he complained. "They claim it is for safety." "It is for safety," Sierra said. "It prevents me from moving at an appropriate speed." "You attempted to charge an elevator." "It closed before I arrived." "That was not a military engagement." "The elevator initiated hostilities." Elena arrived last. Her arm remained in a sling. A healing cut traced one side of her face, and she moved carefully enough to suggest that several other injuries remained hidden beneath her uniform. She carried Sarkin flatbread, a packet of peanut butter, and a cup of Rel mineral broth. Verk stared at the combination. "You are still doing that?" "It works." "It violates 3 culinary customs." "Then it's efficient." Talon made an approving clicking sound. Verk looked at him. "You encouraged this." "I support interspecies cooperation." "This is not cooperation. It is vandalism." Elena dipped the flatbread into the broth. "Complicated vandalism." Footsteps approached from the far end of the hall. Commander Arun walked toward them with the aid of a polished metal cane. His formal uniform concealed most of his injuries, though his stride remained stiff. Major Varro accompanied him. The major no longer required a medical brace, but one shoulder moved less freely than the other. A group of academy officials followed. Workers gathered around the newest section of the wall and removed a dark covering. No graduating class was listed beneath it. No tactical score, no fleet victory. Instead, the engraving read, "The Mercer Standard. Command is measured not only by the objective achieved, but by the lives entrusted to its care." Beneath those words appeared the names of every sector commander, medical worker, engineer, instructor, cadet, and civilian who had contributed to the evacuation and defense of the academy. Hundreds of names filled the black stone. Some belonged to the academy's highest-ranked students. Many did not. Elena's appeared near the middle. Verk found his own beside Talon's, Sierra S., Boron's, and Pavo S. No scores appeared beside them, no ranks, only names. Commander Arun faced the assembled cadets. The Academy's former rescue evaluation measured lives saved after accounting for tactical cost. His cane touched the floor once. The sound carried through the hall. That calculation was incomplete. No one moved. Beginning this term, civilian responsibility will be included within the primary objective of every command exercise. Major Varro's expression suggested that the wording had required several weeks of argument. Commander Arun continued, "Cadets will still learn combat." Talon leaned toward Elena. "Good. They will still learn strategy, logistics, and fleet command." Boron nodded solemnly. "But no officer will graduate from this academy, believing that victory and rescue are separate duties." The rankings display above the far entrance activated. Cadet names appeared across it. Scores shifted. Several old categories vanished. New ones replaced them. Judgment under uncertainty. Preservation of personnel. Civilian responsibility. Command accountability. Elena's name moved. 300th, 200th, 100th, 50th. Then it stopped. 12th. Talon stared at the display. 12. Elena shrugged. I still failed advanced formation marching. You walked into another squad. They moved unexpectedly. They were standing still. Exactly. Verk's name appeared at 4th, Sierra ranked 19th, Boron 21st, Talon 48th. Talon studied the number. I was hoping the invasion would improve my weapons score. You fired 4 weapons and struck 1 target, Verk said. The important target. Commander Arun stopped before Elena. Lieutenant Candidate Mercer. Yes, sir. The Council Review Board has recommended that your exchange continue. That's good. They have also recommended a formal reprimand for repeated insubordination. That sounds less good. Major Varro spoke from beside him. I recommended too. Elena glanced at the Brin. Thank you, Major. You are welcome. The corner of Commander Arun's mouth moved slightly. You remain a difficult cadet. So I've been told. You are also the first human to attend this academy. The Commandant looked toward the new engraving. You will not be the last. Years later, historians would describe the Vora's attack as the event that transformed interspecies officer training. Academies across the Council adopted the Mercer standard. Fleet simulations began counting civilian lives as part of mission success, rather than as collateral statistics recorded after the fact. Cadets learned evacuation planning before weapons deployment. Ships were redesigned with clearer exits, redundant communications, and rescue equipment compatible with the bodies and atmospheres of multiple species. Commanders were no longer rewarded for completing objectives while ignoring the people those objectives were meant to protect. The changes spread slowly, then all at once. A generation of officers graduated believing that saving people was not something that happened after the battle. It was the reason the battle mattered. Verk eventually commanded a fleet of his own. On the day he received his commission, his father attended the ceremony. Afterward, they stood together beneath the wall of distinction. The damaged stone had never been repaired. The names of the 31 remained in a separate memorial nearby, engraved without rank or species beneath a single line. They brought others home. For several minutes, neither Verk nor his father mentioned Kesh. Then Verk asked the question he had carried since childhood. Would you make the same decision again? His father looked at the damaged wall, at the names of those who had died during the Vora's attack, at the hundreds who had carried strangers through smoke, tunnels, and gunfire. Yes, he said. Silence returned. Then his father added, but I would ask for help sooner. Among the Rel, old failures were treated like scars, visible, never touched. Verk touched this one. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. Across the hall, Talon was arguing with a catering officer about whether 4 pastries constituted 1 serving or 4. Boron had removed part of his formal support brace because it restricted ceremonial dignity. Sierra stood several meters away, pretending not to know either of them. Elena waited beneath the Academy's newest banner, explaining to a group of incoming human cadets why they should never trust the East Corridor when attempting to reach the West Instructional Wing. She noticed Verk watching. Does the building still move? She called. No. Are you certain? Verk looked toward Talon, toward Boron, toward Sierra, toward his father's hand resting upon his shoulder, then back at Elena. No. She smiled. So did he. The Academy had once ranked humanity's first cadet last because she refused to leave people behind. In the end, Elena Mercer did not teach the galaxy that humans were stronger. She did not teach them that humans were fearless. She did not even teach them how to win a fight, although several captured Vora's soldiers later admitted that she had been extremely persuasive on the subject. She taught the Academy something harder. A commander could capture every objective, defeat every enemy, and still fail the people who trusted them. Victory was not the moment the fighting stopped. Victory was when everyone who could be brought home finally was.